ومن سلك طريقا يلتمس فيه علما سهل الله له به طريقا إلى الجنة.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين أما بعد. We were on number 36 صح؟ 36 طيب. The Shaykh says رحمه الله تعالى رحمة واسعة. So we're on the 5th chapter of the etiquette of seeking knowledge by Shaykh Bakr Zaid رحمه الله تعالى رحمة واسعة, and hopefully inshallah we'll aim to complete the book today. The Shaykh says رحمه الله إجمام النفس خذ من وقتك سويعات تجم بها نفسك في رياض العلم من كتب المحاضرات الثقافة العامة فإن القلوب يروح عنها ساعة فساعة. The Shaykh rahimahullah ta'ala in this etiquette of seeking knowledge, he's saying it's important that you give the body relaxation and that you don't constantly seek knowledge, and you need to relax your body, because your body has a right over you, like the hadith of Salman radiallahu anhu when he visited Abu Darda, and when he visited him he realized that Abu Darda had no concern for his family in terms of his wife, and also he would be praying all night and so on. Then Salman radiallahu anhu said to him that your body has a right over you, your ahl have a right over you, and so on, and your Lord has a right over you. And when the Prophet ﷺ heard of this, he acknowledged and he agreed with Salman radiallahu anhu. And this is more towards those students who are seeking knowledge 24/7, meaning they're in an institute in which they are full-time students. More so. مثلا in an Islamic university or anywhere else where they're studying from morning to afternoon. So the Shaykh is going to mention as well that sometimes he's going to mention the end of the week or the weekend during his time was a certain number of days, and the students would take those days to relax. So he says it's important that you take a few hours, suwa'at, not even a lot, just a few hours to relax yourself. Like, he is also saying that when you are relaxing yourself, you read those books that are on history, those on biographies of ulama and so on and so forth, not specific books on different sciences that you're memorizing or you're reading or you're studying. نعم. Then he says رحمه الله وفي المأثور عن أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب رضي الله عنه أنه قال أجموا هذه القلوب وابتغوا لها الطرائف الحكمة فإنها تمل كما تمل الأبدان. He says rahimahullah, he mentions a narration from Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu when Ali said radiallahu anhu, relax these hearts, make sure you relax these hearts and give them time to get its energy back and so on. Why? Because they get bored just like the body gets bored. So it's important that a person he does some sort of exercise or something like that in order to get relaxation from the body, and also to give the heart a rest and the brain a rest from memorizing and reading 24/7. And if a person does relax, the benefit of that is that they'll come back stronger. And they'll come back a lot more alert. And as the hadith says that al-mu'min al-qawi khayr min al-mu'min al-da'if, the strong Muslim is more beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or is better than the weak Muslim. So if a person is exercising, obviously as long as this exercise doesn't become a full-time job for him, spending a bit of time exercising, whether it's jogging or any other hobbies that may be of help or benefit to the body. And then he mentions a narration by Shaykh Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, when he mentioned that one of the wisdoms behind the times that it is prohibited to pray. As you'll see in Kitab al-Salah, there are times that it is prohibited to pray. In the morning, ba'd al-Fajr, up until the sun rises, when the sun is at its peak, reaches its zenith right at the top just before Dhuhr, and when the sun is setting. These are 3 times that the Prophet ﷺ prohibited us from praying. So he says rahimahullah ta'ala بل في النهي عنه بعد الأوقات مصالح أخر من إجمام النفوس بعد الأوقات من ثقل العبادة. طيب. He says one of the wisdoms of having prohibited times is that the soul and the body are not busied 24/7, they're not occupied with ibadah. So if we were to be occupied with ibadah all the time, then we would get bored. Lakin the fact that we've got this time where it's not permissible to pray, then as soon as that time passes, then inshallah we can carry on worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the same goes for Mathalan Ramadan. When Ramadan comes, it's a whole month that we're fasting. Like when it's coming, we're yearning for it and we're hoping for it to come. And during those days, although the days are long and the nights are short and so on, we don't really feel it. Why? Because we're looking forward to it. We've been waiting for 11 months for the next Ramadan. Like if it was every single day, every single month was Ramadan, then we would obviously naturally get bored of it. And then he mentions, rahimahullah, that towards during his time, that on a Friday, the utla or the weekend was a Friday, or the weekend would start from Thursday afternoon up until Friday. So they would have that day and a half, Friday and a half of Thursday, to have as a day off. And then he mentions a few books that we should read that would benefit in terms of general knowledge on how to spend time. Then he says, rahimahullah, number 37, قراءة التصحيح والطبد, reading the books in order for correction and precision in terms of knowing the harakat, in terms of knowing when to put a fatha and so on and so forth. The Shaykh says, rahimahullah, احرص على قراءة التصحيح والطبد على شيخ متقن لتأمن من التحريف والتصحيف والغلط والوهم. So he says, be careful or exert yourself in reading, in reciting upon a shaykh that is well grounded, so that you're saved from and you protect yourself from distortion, meaning reading the letters in the wrong way, or tashif, or the harakat in the wrong way, and making a mistake. So when you read upon the shaykh is going to tell you mathalan how to pronounce certain names, how to pronounce certain places, how to pronounce certain words, and if you get it wrong, then he'll obviously correct you. And then the shaykh says, rahimahullah, وإذا استقرأت تراجم العلماء بخاصة الحفاظ منهم تجد عددا غير قليل ممن جرد المطولات في مجالس أو في أيام قراءة طبد على شيخ متقن فهذا حافظ بن حجر رحمه الله. And then he says, if you look into the biography of the ulama, you will find that a lot of them spent days reading these big kutub, these book or long books to their ulama in order to be able to get the correct pronunciation and the correct harakat for the book that they're reading. So and then he mentions an example. For example, Hafid ibn Hajar rahimahullah, he read Sahih al-Bukhari in 10 gatherings, 10 majalis, 10 sittings, and every majlis was about 10 hours long. So with the benefit of this is that the imam or the student would be reading and the shaykh is listening to him, and then the shaykh is correcting the student if he makes a mistake anywhere. Now the benefit of that is later on that in the past books would be printed, not printed as now, like in they would a person would write it with his hand all over again, the naskh of it. So if a person hasn't written the correct word or the correct spelling of the word or put the correct haraka in there, then later on when you're passing it, you're going to be passing on wrong information and the incorrect spelling and so on. So that is why the ulama of the past, they used to do it. It can be said, and also he read Sahih al-Bukhari, Sahih Muslim in 4 gatherings, in 4 sittings. And in both days it was the gathering was long, and also Sunan Abu Dawood and Mu'jam al-Tabarani al-Saghir. So and then he mentions a few different ulama that also did exactly the same. Some of them reading Sahih al-Bukhari, some of them reading Tabaqat Shafi'i and so on and so forth. Or some of them reading Sahih al-Bukhari, And benefit of that is obviously, as we mentioned, that in the past there wasn't this copy and paste whereby you print one book and you can get 1,000 prints, or you print one time you can get 1,000 prints, where there's going to be no mistake. Like when it's a matter of the hand and a matter of the eye seeing, then obviously there's room for mistake. Then the Shaykh says, rahimahullah, number 38, Jangd al-Mutawwalat, going through and summarizing and reading the long works. Al-Mutawwalat, We studied yesterday and the day before that the ulama split the books into several different categories. There are mukhtasarat, which are shorter books that we study, like Usul al-Thalatha, Qawa'id al-Arba'a, Kitab al-Tawheed, al-Wasatiyya, al-Waraqat, and Qawa'id al-Fiqhiyya, al-Manzuma, and so on. So these are mukhtasarat. They are a short book in each science. So مثلا Arba'in an-Nawawi, Imam Nawawi rahimahullah, that is considered a mukhtasar, a short book. Like in Sahih al-Bukhari is considered, Fath al-Bari for example, which is the explanation of Sahih al-Bukhari, is considered from the mutawwalat. طيب, Zaid al-Mustaqni is considered a mukhtasar, a short book. But al-Mughni is considered from the longer books of fiqh that deals with comparative fiqh, where it's 14 volumes. So the Shaykh is saying rahimahullah that it's good to go through these books. طيب, الجبد للمطولات من أهم المهمات لتعدد المعارف وتوسيع المدارك واستخراج مكنونها من فوائد والفرائد. He says rahimahullah that it's important to read these long books from time to time, and it is extremely important because by reading these, you're going to be broadening your horizon, and you're going to be able to get hidden benefits and treasures that are found within these books. Unique benefits that you may normally not come across. And he also says, وَالْخِبْرَةِ مِنْ مَظَانِّ الْأَبْحَاثِ وَالْمَسَائِلِ. And also you will be able to get experience on where different issues and different masail can be found. Where different issues and different masail can be found. So for example, if you wanted to look at the virtues of the Sahaba, then you would go to the book dealing with the virtues of the Sahaba, مثلا in the chapters in Sahih al-Bukhari towards the end and so on. If you wanted to know a benefit of Tawheed, then you would go to مثلا Kitab Tawheed of Sahih al-Bukhari, or any of these long books, regardless of what it is, whether it's Bidayah wa Nihaya, history for example, and so on and so forth. So you're able to know where these benefits are found in. Therefore later on, should you require a benefit, then you can go back to that exact book and where it is. So مثلا a book like Sir al-A'lam Nubala, which is a biography of tons and tons of different individuals, narrators and kins and so on and so forth, it falls in about 30 volumes. It is about 30 volumes or so. Now when you're reading, if you come across a certain benefit and then you highlight that benefit somewhere along the line, you probably may not come across that book again. Like when you want that benefit, you know exactly what volume it is. So you say volume 6, page 30, whatever. So you know exactly where to find that benefit. And then he says rahimahullah, وَقَدْ كَانَ السَّالِفُونَ يَكْتُبُونَ عِنْدَ وُقُوفِهِمْ بَلَغْ حَتَّى لَا يَفُوتُ شَيْءٌ عِنْدَ الْمُعَاوَدَةِ لَا سِيَّمَا مَعَ طُولِ الزَّمَنِ. Then he says rahimahullah, he mentions a benefit when you're reading these long books. What you should do is, whenever, for example, you're reading, let's say you're reading for 2 hours and then you stop, you're going out or you're going to do something else, then you write balagh, ba la mughayn. Balagh means reached up to here, I've reached up to here. So later on, when you come back, you'll start from exactly where you left off, rather than going back 10 pages later and spending 10 pages that you're reading it again. Although nowadays we have bookmarks. You can bookmark the page if it's an electronic copy, or you can use one of these stick notes that you can put on there. Then the Shaykh says rahimahullah, حسن السؤال, number 39. He says, التزم أدب المباحثة من حسن السؤال والاستماع. He says, abide by those etiquettes with regards to research and collective study. Because from the etiquettes of that from the etiquettes of حسن السؤال is al-istima', listening. Because the sihha, or the correctness of understanding the jawab, understanding the answer, depends and relates to whether you understand it. Whether you understand the way the mu'allif or the way the shaykh is speaking and the way that he's answering. So that from husn al-istima', from you listening well, or your understanding of it, depends on how good you listen. For example, if you ask a question and then you turn away, and then the teacher speaking, or you're just taking down notes and the teacher speaking, obviously you won't understand that. Like in the lack of understanding comes back from where? Not because you haven't asked, but like in because you have not listened to what the teacher was saying. Then he says, وَإِيَّاكَ إِذَا حَصَلَ الْجَوَابَ أَن تَقُولَ. Then he says, and be careful. If you do get the answer, be careful to say لكن الشيخ فلان يقول كذا, لكن شيخ فلان, this sheikh says that, قال لي كذا, or he said this to me. So مثلا if you ask a sheikh a question and he gives you an answer that you're not used to or that you did not expect, طيب, do not say to him, yeah, okay, fair enough, but what do you say to the fatwa of Shaykh Fulan? And he says this, he believes this. طيب. نعم. Why is that? Because it shows, he says رحمه الله وقال كذا فإن هذا وهن في الأدب, that is a deficiency in your etiquette, وضرب لأهل العلم بعضهم ببعض, and that is creating a rift or discord and hostility between the people of knowledge. فاحذر هذا, so be careful. وإن كنت لابد فاعلا, and if it is a must that you reply back to the sheikh and you say to him, how about this and so on, فكن واضحا في السؤال, be clear in your question, وقل ما رأيك في الفتوى كذا وكذا, في الفتوى بكذا. طيب شيخ, what is the answer, or what do we reply back to those people who say X, Y, Z? نعم. ولا تسمي أحدا, and do not name anybody. So also, for example, when asking a person a question, don't mention who you've asked as well, and don't send them a fatwa, because it is almost as if you're saying I'm giving you proof, or you're comparing their fatwa. So for example, you want to ask someone a question, ask them your question ala طول, ask them straight away, and don't send them other fatwa and say this is what I came across, this is what I came across. If you've come across these, why even ask them in the first place? And that is sometimes a mistake that a lot of students make. Then he mentions a narration by Imam rahimahullah, and he says, إذا جلست إلى عالم فسألت فقها لا تعنتا. If you sit and you ask a alim a question, then ask in order to gain understanding, not in order to put him on the spot, in order to go to extremes and so on and so forth, or in order to show that you've got understanding of whatever it is that the sheikh is saying. Then he says, وقال أيضا وللعلم ست مراتب, and ilm, knowledge, he says, has, يعني Ibn Qayyim says that it has 6 levels. نعم, it has 6 levels. From these 6 levels, he says, أولها, the very first one, حسن السؤال. From the levels of knowledge is asking a question in a good way, and we've just studied how to ask a question in a good way. Then he says, رحمه الله, حسن الإنصات والاستماع, paying attention and listening. Paying attention and listening. That is also from the ways that a person can gain knowledge, by asking a question in a respectable manner, and also by listening and paying attention when the answer is being given. And then he says وحسن الفهم, and also understanding it in the correct way, understanding the question or the answer in a correct way. So for example, if he doesn't understand something, that he can say to the sheikh, what did you mean by this? If the sheikh gives the answer and he doesn't understand the answer, and then he passes on the answer that he doesn't understand, then obviously he's going to pass on the wrong information. Then the sheikh says, the fourth way of level, or the fourth level of knowledge, is al-hifdhu, to memorize knowledge. And the fifth one, at-ta'lim, and also to teach. That is also one of the benefits, levels of knowledge, that you teach, the knowledge that you acquire. And the Shaykh Rahmah, towards the end of this fasal, he's going to mention this as well in a separate etiquette. As-sadisa, the 6th one, وَهِيَ ثَمَرَتُهُ, and it is the benefit and the fruit of actually seeking knowledge, al-amalu bihi وَمُرَعَاتُ حُدُودِهِ, which is the benefit of actually seeking knowledge, is to act upon this knowledge and to preserve the boundaries set by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to act upon the knowledge. And that is the actual reason why you seek knowledge, because obviously you seek knowledge for different reasons. In the number one reason and the highest level of why you would want to seek knowledge is to act upon your knowledge. ثم أخذ في بيانها. نعم. Then the Shaykh says rahimahullah, number 40, المناظرة بلا ممارة, بلا ممارة, or بلا ممارة, نعم, without argumentation. Then he says rahimahullah, in this number 40, etiquette number 40, إياك والممارات فإنها نقمة، أما المناظرة في حق أو في الحق فإنها نعمة، إذ المناظرة الحقة فيها إظهار الحق على الباطل والراجح على المرجوح. نعم. فهي مبنية على المناصحة والحلم والنشر العلم. أما الممارات في المحاورات والمناظرات فإنها تحجج ورياء ولغط وكبرياء. The Shaykh says rahimahullah, إياك, be careful of having disputes. Why? Because it causes ill will and malice intention. As for al-munadhara, debating or disputing or discussing rather, fil haqq, in a way in which you and the other person both want to attain haqq and reach the haqq, فإنها نعمة, then it is a blessing. For example, if you're studying a mas'ala and it's مثلا a fiqh mas'ala, and you're presenting evidences for opinion number 1, and the other student is presenting evidence for opinion number 2. You're going to research this mas'ala and you're going to look at all of the evidence that they use. He's going to look at the mas'ala from another angle, another opinion, and he's going to look at the evidences that they use. And then you discuss these evidences. And then you mention, yeah, but this hadith is a dalil. And then he says to you, this hadith is not even authentic for it to be a dalil. And then he turns back and he says to you, sahih, it's not authentic, lakin there's this other hadith and there's ijma' here. And then you say, but this hadith doesn't point towards the mas'ala, and so on and so forth. So that is a healthy discussion, and that is a way of broadening your understanding and broadening your horizon for being able to deal with different evidences from the Quran and the Sunnah. Then he says, rahimahullah, because that munadhara that is based on haqq, then in it there's idharul haqq, you're portraying and demonstrating and bringing out the truth al-batil, upon the batil, and you're putting the falsehood down. And also the rajih, the stronger opinion, al-marjuh, to the weaker opinion. So you're clarifying and you're coming to know of, and you're exposing the stronger opinion, and you're mentioning the stronger opinion and weakening the weaker opinion, or mentioning the weakness of the other opinion. So it is based on munasaha, advising one another and having patience and forbearance, and also spreading knowledge. Lakin, as for debating for the sake of debating, also that you can be victorious over the person that you're debating, also that it could be said he's a alim and he put him to shame and so on, then the Shaykh said, in it there's no fruit, it's just disturbance and argumentation and a show of muscles and pride and a struggle for a person to overcome his friend or the person that he's debating, and it consists of deceit and enmity, and obviously it is not something that a student of knowledge should be doing. So based on that, we find that debating or discussing masail is of 2 types: a type which is permissible and a type which is not permissible. So you're right, discussing or debating is of 2 types. The first is that which is permissible, in which it is a healthy discussion based on evidence and trying to come to the correct conclusion and answer. And the second type is the discussing and the debating that is blameworthy, in which it is not done for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, rather the intent behind it is to overcome the other person and to show off and to have and to exercise one's ego. Now, then the Shaykh says, rahimahullah, etiquette number 41, مذاكرة العلم, revision and revising knowledge. He says, تمتع مع البصراء بالمذاكرة والمطارحة فإنها في مواطن تفوق المطالعة وتشحذ الذهن وتقوي الذاكرة ملتزما الإنصاف والملاطفة مبتعدا عن الحيف والشغب والمجازفة. He says, rahimahullah, enjoy and take part in having mudhakara, discussing and presenting different masail with those people who have insight and understanding of the religion. For verily this sometimes is better, meaning this revising is better than you reading books on your own, because it sharpens the mind and it strengthens the memory of a person, as long as a person is fair and just and kind to the person that he is debating with, or that he is revising with. Naam. As long as the person stays away from being harsh and being unjust. And then he says, وَكُنْ عَلَى حَذْرٍ فَإِنَّهَا تَكْشِفُ عَوَارَ مَنْ لَا يَصْدُقُ. So be careful when revising knowledge. Let your intention be to revive knowledge, for you to memorize and understand and so on. Like if it turns into the opposite of that, then it exposes a defect in your understanding, and it exposes the person who is untruthful, the person who is not there for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَقَدْ قِيلَ, and it was said, إِحْيَاءُ الْعِلْمِ مُذَاكَرَتُهُ. The way to revive knowledge, or the revival of knowledge, is in revision. The way to revive knowledge is in revision. And this is extremely important, because sometimes you may think you've understood a mas'ala in class on your own, or even when you go home and you revise on your own, you may think you've understood it. Lakin, when you sit with your peers and you're revising this mas'ala again, they actually point out a different way of looking at the mas'ala, and you realize that you understood it in an incorrect way. So there's always going to be a benefit of studying and revising with other brothers or other sisters if the person's from the sisters. Why? Because mathalan, let's say you've understood something in class, you've studied it on your own, you've revised it, and then you're meeting the brothers at the end of the week to revise this mas'ala. When you present the mas'ala how you've understood it, if it is the correct way, then alhamdulillah, now you're confident that you understood it the correct way, because your 2 or 3 or 4 brothers that were revising with you, they agreed with your understanding. So you will have more confidence in that your understanding is correct. However, if you've misunderstood the mas'ala, and you understood it in a way that the Shaykh did not intend, then you're going to obviously mention it in front of the other brothers, and then they're going to correct you. And then they will correct you and say, La, the Shaykh did not mean this, rather he meant this. And you think, subhanAllah, I didn't even know. And then you're going to end up what? Correcting it again. So in any case, you won't be losing. You will always benefit when revising. Another benefit is the knowledge that you revise with your friends and peers in outside of class. It will be difficult to forget that knowledge. Why? Because it's not something that you just looked at, you read up, and that's it. La, it is something that you had a discussion over, and you were using a lot of your senses. Mathalan, it might be that you're touching a specific book. It might be that you're writing something on the board. You're looking at this mas'ala, and you're looking at someone, for example, explaining it on the board. And I think some of the brothers, they tried that with inheritance, and it makes it a lot easier when you're discussing it in a group with your peers on the board. So you're using more of your senses. Naam. Then the Shaykh says, rahimahullah, number 42, طالب العلم يعيش بين الكتاب والسنة وعلومهما فهما له كالجناحين للطائر فاحذر أن تكون مهيض الجناح. The Shaykh says, rahimahullah, the student of knowledge, he lives between the Quran and the Sunnah and their different sciences. The Quran and the Sunnah and the different sciences that are found in the Quran. Meaning, Quran has different sciences within it, from tajweed, from tafsir, qira'at, and so on. And also the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ has different sciences as well within it. And you will find a lot of the sciences in usul al-fiqh. So he says the student of knowledge busies himself with that, because they are like the 2 wings of a bird to the student of knowledge. And he cannot obviously seek knowledge and learn and gain understanding of the Sharia except with them. So be careful of leaving it off, because if you do, then it will cause you to be weakened in your understanding. Then the Shaykh says, rahimahullah, number 43, استكمال أدوات كل فن, to complete the learning tools of every subject. Meaning to learn the foundations of every subject, to know a bit about everything. And he's going to, so is he going to mention the sciences? So there are different sciences, and those sciences have foundations. So a student doesn't only rely on one science and say, that's the only knowledge that I'm going to seek. La, he studies different sciences, and that is called having a general understanding of all of the different sciences. And then later on, he can go into what is called nowadays a takhassus, a specialty. So for example, in the beginning, a student of knowledge, when they seek knowledge at the beginning, whether it's in a ma'had, in an institute, or مثلا in university, they're going to be studying different sciences. Right. So you study مثلا hadith, but when you're studying hadith, you study the understanding of the hadith, the fiqh of the hadith, and also the foundations and the terminologies of the hadith, which is called what? Mustalah al-Hadith. Then also you study fiqh and how to pray and fast and so on. But then you also study usul al-fiqh and qawa'id al-fiqhiyya, which are two sciences, some of the most important sciences that are connected to al-fiqh. So you're not only learning the fiqh, but you're understanding its foundations and why the ulama derive at this ruling. Why do they say this is wajib, and why do they say this is a sunnah, and why do they say this is a haram? The way you come to that conclusion is by looking at their foundations. Likewise, tafsir. When you're reading the different interpretations of the Quran, whether it's in At-Tabari, whether it's in Qurtubi or Ibn Kathir or Ibn Sa'di, when you look at these tafsir, you also need to learn the foundations that they build their tafsir on. So for example, the types of tafsir. What are the types of tafsir? How to interpret the Quran, using the Quran, interpreting the Quran with Quran, interpreting the Quran with the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, interpreting the Quran with the ijma' of the Sahaba or the statements of the Sahaba. That is some of the sorts of things that you learn. Also, the same goes for the Arabic language, knowing the nahu and the sarf and so on. So once a student studies these sciences, then they can go on to something which is, and they're well grounded in this, then they can go to something which is called a takhassus, a field that they specialize in. And that obviously, a lot of the times, it depends on what the person has an inclination towards, what they desire more. Some people want to study hadith more, some people want to study tafsir more, some people want to specialize in sharia. That is called a takhassus. And everyone obviously everyone has a different taste. Like, and also what a person needs to take into consideration with that is what his community might need. What his community might need. It is something that is extremely important to take into consideration. طيب. Then the Shaykh says, رحمه الله, لن تكون طالب علم متقنا متفننا حتى يلج الجمل في سم الخياط ما لم تستكمل أدوات ذلك الفن. ففي الفقه بين الفقه وأصوله، وفي الحديث بين علم الرواية والدراية، وهكذا، وإلا فلا تتعنى. He says, رحمه الله, you will not be a strong student of knowledge that is diverse in his knowledge and that has precision in his knowledge. Obviously, you'll never be until the camel can go into the needle, which is obviously impossible. ما لم تستكمل, as long as you do not complete the tools needed for every science. The tools, i.e. the foundations needed for every science. مثلا, if you're a person who specializes in tafsir, and you don't know nothing about hadith and mustalah hadith, and you don't know what a weak hadith is and the conditions of a hadith that is authentic, you may bring a hadith to prove the tafsir or to do tafsir of the Quran that are weak. You're going to be using weak hadith to affirm ahkam of the Quran or ahkam or rulings of the Sharia. So you need to know what the mustalahat of ilm al-hadith. نعم. Then he mentions قال تعالى الذين آتيناهم الكتاب يتلونه حق تلاوته أولئك يؤمنون به. It mentions those who we gave the kitab to, the book to, meaning Bani Israel, they read it in its correct tilawah, in the correct way, and they give it their right. And their right is not just the recitation, like it is also in them applying that, whatever it is that the Quran points towards, or the masail or the boundaries, the halal and the haram that the Quran points towards. طيب. That is al-fasl al-khamis. Al-fasl al-sadis, the sixth fasl or the sixth chapter of this book, at-tahalli bil-amal, to beautify yourself with implementing and acting upon the knowledge that you learn. the knowledge that you learn. Now, he says in etiquette number 44, من علامات العلم النافع, from the signs of beneficial knowledge, he says تساءل مع نفسك عن حظك من علامات العلم النافع وهي. So he says, ask yourself with regards to the signs of beneficial knowledge. Now, many of you, mashallah, have been attending classes for a long time. Many of you have been attending classes from many different sheikhs and many different teachers and in many different institutes. So a lot of you have got a good understanding of the Sharia. So he says, ask yourself about the knowledge that you have learnt. And is it a beneficial knowledge or not? Is it a proof for you or against you? He says, number one, al-amalu bihi. The first sign of beneficial knowledge is that you act upon it. The very first sign of beneficial knowledge is that you act upon it. If you don't act upon your knowledge, then there's no point in you studying. Mathalan, if you know that you have to pay zakah and the amount of zakah that you pay and the threshold and when you're meant to pay it, and then you don't pay the zakah, what is the benefit? If you learn how to pray correctly according to the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and then you don't pray at all, what is the benefit in that? And this goes for all the other ahkam. Mathalan, if you learn the ahkam of sujood al-sahwi, and you don't know what to do if you make a mistake, what is the point of seeking knowledge? Then that shows that knowledge is more of a proof against you rather than for you. Number two, he says, Hilyatu Taalib al Ilm. He says, from the signs of beneficial knowledge is for a person to dislike being praised and given compliments and to show haughtiness over other people. And that is a sign that you will find. If a person dislikes these things, then that is a sign of beneficial knowledge. That is why some of the ulama, or many of the ulama, if they are to be praised, they don't like the praise. If they are to be called al-allama, some of them may start crying. And Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, when he was praised, he said, Allahumma ghfir li ma la ya'lamun, oh Allah, forgive me for that which they do not know, وَجْعَلْنِي خَيْرًا مِمَّا يَظُنُّونَ, and make me better than that which they believe, that which they believe I am. Or dua نحو هذا, similar to that, where he says, oh Allah, forgive me for that which they do not know, and make me better than they think I am. So he did not believe that he was better than anyone else, rather they would belittle themselves. And that is a sign of beneficial knowledge. So for example, if you ask the question, you don't answer it, you let someone else answer and say, he's more virtuous than me, he's more knowledgeable than me, he'll give you a better answer, and so on and so forth. That is a sign of beneficial knowledge. Like, if the person says, ana laha every time, and he answers everything that comes his way, and he likes to be praised, and if someone calls him, mathalan, Shaykh, he gets angry and he says, why don't you call me al-allama? Or if someone says, for example, that he has a BA, bachelor's, when in reality he has a PhD, and then he gets angry, why did you say that I've only got a BA, I've got a PhD, why didn't you mention that? Sometimes you come across that. Wal-'iyadhu billah. Some people get angry. For example, a person might be a PhD holder and then they're called Shaykh. They get angry because they say, why didn't you mention that I've got a PhD? And there was a story that I heard from one of the mashayikh where he said a person was being introduced. And before delivering a lecture, and before the lecture he was telling this person, the person that was introducing him, say this and this and this and this, and I've graduated from here, and so on and so forth. And then a while later, obviously during the introduction, the person started to say exactly what he told him to say. So he was saying he's graduated from this, and he studied this and studied under this sheikh and so. And he says, qif, Allah yahdik, Allah yahdik, qif. He tells him to stop. Allah, may Allah guide you, stop. Although he's the one that actually told him to what? To say it, wal-'iyadhu billah. Naam. And also takabbur ala al-khalq, to have haughtiness and pride and show ego in front of everyone else and think that you're more knowledgeable than everyone else. That is a sign of deficiency in your knowledge. Then he says, rahimahullah, takathu tawadu'ika kullama izdadta ilman. Another sign of beneficial knowledge is that your modesty and your humbleness, it increases every time you increase knowledge. Every time you increase your knowledge, and it was said, I believe it was Imam Shafi'i who said, كُلُّمَا ازْدَدْتُ عِلْمًا بِجَهْلِي. The more I increased in knowledge, the more I increased in my ignorance. And we're going to get to a point relating to this later on, inshallah. Number 4, الْهَرَبُ مِنْ حُبِّ التَّرَأُّسِ وَالشُّهْرَةِ وَالدُّنْيَا. from the signs of beneficial knowledge is that a person runs away from leadership and a person runs away from being famous. That is a sign from the signs of a person having ikhlas, and a sign that a person's knowledge is beneficial. And this is extremely important, difficult to apply today, where you will find a lot of people nowadays, all they're after is acceptance from the people, and all they're after is the number of followers that they have. So they won't say a certain thing because they're going to lose the followers that they have. And you find a lot of people being misguided because of this. So they avoid saying the word of haqq when it needs to be said, obviously in the correct way. They'll avoid saying it because they know if they say it, then what is going to happen is they're going to lose about 200,000 followers, or they're going to lose a certain number of followers. So what they do is they refrain from speaking about certain things even to do with aqeedah. They will refrain from that in order to keep their leadership and in order to remain relevant. Because obviously a lot of the times, if a person tells the ummah this is halal and this is haram and the Prophet ﷺ said this and so on, they'll say that Shaykh is a mutawwa', he makes things difficult. Like, if you say to them everything is halal, 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 then obviously they're going to say, mashallah, this Shaykh is a muthaqif, he's a person he has understanding and he knows the fiqh al-waqi', he knows what is going on in society, he's not just stuck in the books and so on. Now, and then he says number 5, hajru da'wa al-ilm, leaving off the claim to knowledge, leaving off saying that you have knowledge or even praising yourself. And again, if a person is saying I have knowledge, or a person is saying I sought knowledge here and I sought knowledge there, then that shows his knowledge is not beneficial. If there is no need, for example, if someone says to you, where have you sought knowledge from? I want to take knowledge from you, like, where have you studied? For you to answer, that is wajib for you to answer, you must. Because this person has a right to ask you where you have studied. As the Salaf will say, this knowledge is your religion, so be careful who you take your religion from. So the student of knowledge has a right to ask his teacher, obviously in a respectable manner, like he has a right to ask, where have you studied, Shaykh? Or obviously it is better that they ask someone else about their Shaykh. Like, if you're asked, then you can't obviously say, like, don't worry about it, because now it's amana, you need to tell them. Like, without being asked, that is where the problem is. To say, I studied under this Shaykh and I studied under that Shaykh and so on. Even mentioning the shuyukh that you studied under and the institute that you studied under, that could be a sign of you showing off. Because you mentioning that when you don't need to mention it, then it shows you're kind of boasting with regards to the knowledge and wherever you've studied. If you're asked, then khalas. Like, and if not, then keep it to yourself. Number 6, he says, rahimahullah, isa'atu dhanni bin nafs. From the signs of beneficial knowledge is that you have bad thought of yourself and you don't think, wallahi mashallah, I'm Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, I know what I've done, I know what I've memorized, I've done this and so on and so forth. And he says, wa ihsanuhu bin nas, and he has good thought of other people. He has good thought of other people. So a person that has beneficial knowledge is the one that questions himself, he doubts himself and he's suspicious of himself, and he looks at his shortcomings with regards to others, like, and he has good thought of them. He has husnul dhan, and he doesn't have bad suspicion of others. Naam. Tanazzuhan 'an al-wuqu'i bihim, and he has good thought of them so that he stays away from disparaging them and insulting them and belittling them. Naam. So that is all signs of beneficial knowledge. And the opposite to these points that the Shaykh has mentioned, these 6 points, if these signs are signs of beneficial knowledge, then the opposite to them are signs of what? Knowledge that is not beneficial. And your knowledge is either for you or against you. The Prophet ﷺ said, Al-Qur'an hujjatun laka wa alayk. The Qur'an is either for you or against you. So it's important that you make your knowledge on your side. You turn your knowledge on your side and it becomes a proof for you Yawm al-Qiyamah, in the dunya and in the hereafter. Also from beneficial knowledge is that a person respects those that preceded him in knowledge. Those who preceded him in knowledge. The Prophet ﷺ said, the one that doesn't respect our alim is not from us. So a person, no matter how knowledgeable he is, it is important that they respect those who are that preceded them in goodness, preceded them in age, in knowledge, in virtue. Then it's important that they respect them. Like, if a person, as soon as he has a bit of knowledge, he starts to belittle all of those people that taught him, and he says, I'm more knowledgeable than them, or he starts to disrespect them, or he doesn't attend their classes, or he tells the people don't take knowledge from them, then that shows that person hasn't benefited from the knowledge that he has learned. And Abdullah ibn Mubarak radiallahu anhu, on that note, Abdullah ibn Mubarak, إِذَا ذُكِرَ أَخْلَاقُ مِنْ سَلَفٍ يُنْشِدُ, if the Salaf and their manners and their etiquettes and their virtue, if they were mentioned, he would say, لَا تَعْرِضَنَّ بِذِكْرِنَا مَعَ ذِكْرِهِمْ لَيْسَ الصَّحِيحُ إِذَا مَشَاكَ الْمُقْعَدِ. Do not mention us with them. Meaning when you mention this Salaf, the Salaf al-Salih, don't bother mentioning us, because we're not on the same level. We're lower than them by a million miles. He's saying because لَيْسَ الصَّحِيحُ إِذَا مَشَى, if the person that is able to walk properly, he is not the same as the person that is not able to walk properly for whatever reason. So just like there's a big difference between the one that is able to walk properly and the one that is not able to walk properly, he says there's a big difference between us and the Salaf al-Salih. And don't forget, he is from the Salaf. Rahmatullahi alayhi rahmatan wasi'ah. Etiquette number 45. He says, giving the alms of knowledge, zakatul ilm. Giving the zakah of knowledge, meaning passing it on. The Shaykh says, rahimahullah, addi zakat al-ilm, give the alms and the zakah of knowledge. Sadi'an bil haqq, proclaiming the truth. Ammaran bil ma'ruf wa naha'an anil ma'ruf, anil munkar. Enjoying proclaim the truth and teach the truth and pass on the truth whilst enjoying the good. Always enjoying the good and always prohibiting the evil. Muwazinan bayn al-masalih wal-matar, whilst looking and weighing between the masalih, the harms, the benefits and the harms. And this is extremely important. So write a qa'idah down, nashirin lil-ilm, in spreading knowledge. So he goes weighing out the harms and benefits in spreading knowledge. Write down, ad-deenu mabniyun, ad-deenu, the religion, mabniyun, is built upon, ala jalb al-masalihi wa takthiriha wa daf' al-mafasidi wa taqliliha. وتقليلها. And the meaning of that is ad-deenu mabniyun, the religion, our religion and Islam is built upon jalb al-masalih, bringing about benefits, وتكثيرها وتكميلها, and increasing it and completing it, meaning these benefits. تكثيرها وتكميلها, increasing these benefits and completing these benefits. Everything that benefits the person or the community in their religion or in their dunya. وَدَفْعِ يعني على دفع المفاسد وتقليلها, and it is also built upon repelling and removing harms and minimizing those harms. So when you're enjoying the good, forbidding the evil, when you're teaching, when you're especially enjoying the good and forbidding the evil, always look at the harms and the benefits. Sometimes it might be better for you not to enjoy the good in a specific situation and wait until a later time. Sometimes, مثلا, Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, he was walking with some of his students and he came across the Tatar, those people who used to kill the believers for fun. So he was walking past them, and they were drunk and they were lying down on the floor. And some of his students said to him, are you not going to tell them that it's haram and so on and so forth? Are you not going to admonish them against what they're drinking? He said, la, leave them alone. For verily when they're drinking, they're only harming themselves. Like, if they wake up and they become sober, they're going to start killing everyone else. So it's good to weigh out. It's important, not even good. It's important to weigh out the harms and the benefit. And also, not something that you can apply. There may be something that you can apply here in the UK that you can't apply in other parts of Europe, in other countries of Europe. So you can't give them all one blanket statement. Like, you need to rather look at the harms and the benefits. He says also, you have to spread knowledge, and you have to love to give benefit to others, وبذل الجاه والشفاعة الحسنة للمسلمين في النوائب الحق والمعروف. And also you have to be forefront in sacrificing your honor when it comes to helping and interceding for the believer, whether it's in his worldly affairs or in religious affairs. Then he says, mentions the hadith of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, in which the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, إِذَا مَاتَ الْإِنسَانُ انْقَطَعَ عَمَلُهُ. If a person dies, all of his actions end and they're cut off, إِلَّا مِنْ ثَلَاث, except for three. He said, مِنْ صَدَقَةٍ جَارِيَةٍ, a sadaqah that is ongoing. So a person pays sadaqah, and this sadaqah doesn't end there, like it goes on for a long time, and that benefit of the sadaqah passes on to, is transferred onto other people. It benefits many other people. Or علم ينتفع به, or he leaves behind knowledge that is beneficial. Here we are saying Bukhari said, Shaykh Bakr ibn Zaid said, and he passed away many years ago. Lakin that is ilm that is beneficial, that a person leaves behind. Therefore now, every time inshallah that we're reading this book, or anyone is reading this book or benefiting from it, then inshallah the Shaykh rahimahullah in his grave will be rewarded, rahmatullah alayhi. He says, أَوْ وَلَدٍ صَالِحٍ يَدْعُ لَهُ, or a righteous person, a child that he leaves behind, and that righteous child making dua for him. So these are the three things that help a person in his grave, where his actions will carry on. Then he says, قال بعض أهل العلم, some of the ulama, they would say, هذه الثلاثة لا تجتمع إلا للعالم الباذل لعلمه فبذله صدقة ينتفع بها والمتلقي لها ابن للعالم في تعلمه عليه. So he says, rahimahullah, these three are not found in a person except the alim. Meaning all three are not found in one person except the alim. Why? Because the alim, the knowledge that he's passing on, that is what? That is beneficial knowledge. That is sadaqah jariyah that he's passing on. So his actions are carrying on, and his knowledge is being benefited from. And also the people that he is teaching, they're like children for him, or the people that are benefiting are like children for him that are going to make dua for him. And also if a person has a righteous child, then obviously he'll get that child or that child will be making dua for him, so he'll get that benefit as well. So the alim is the only one that can have all of these. طيب. Then the Shaykh says, rahimahullah, وَلِشَرَفِ الْعِلْمِ, and due to the virtue of knowledge, فَإِنَّهُ يَزِيدُ بِكَثْرَةِ الْإِنفَاقِ, it increases the more you pass it on. وَيَنْقُصُ مَعَ الْإِشْفَاقِ وَآفَتُهُ الْكِتْمَانُ عَفْوًا. وَيَنْقُصُ, and it decreases. مَعَ الْإِشْفَاقِ وَآفَتُهُ الْكِتْمَانُ, and it decreases by not spreading it and not passing it on, and also by hiding the knowledge. And there's a few lines of Al-Qasidatu, or the Qasidah of Abi Ishaq al-Biri. He says, Yazid, when talking about knowledge and spreading knowledge, he says, يَزِيدُ بِكَثْرَةِ الْإِنفَاقِ مِنْهُ وَيَنْقُصُ إِنْ بِهِ كَفًّا شَدَدْتَهُ. He says that knowledge, the more you increase, the more you spread it, the more you propagate it and teach it, the more knowledge that you will have. Why? Because when you're teaching, you're going to look at other masail that are connected to the book. And that knowledge that you're passing on, you're going to be well grounded in it first and foremost, because obviously you're going to be teaching. Also, when you're preparing the lesson, you're going to look at a lot of different masail. You're going to look at a lot of different masail. So you may write benefits in your book that you're not teaching to the students. You're not mentioning it to them. And that's what teachers do. They'll be writing things, there's benefits that they've written down, lakin it might not be beneficial for the student at that time. Lakin for the teacher, he writes it down. Lakin if a person decides to not teach and stay away from teaching, then his knowledge will not increase. Rather, it will be the opposite, where it will decrease. And then the Shaykh says, rahimahullah, number 46. Izzatul ulama, the honor and the glory of the ulama. التحلي بعزة العلماء. صيانة العلم وتعظيمه. صيانة العلم وتعظيمه وحماية جناب عزته وشرفه وبقدر ما تبذله في هذا يكون سبب كسب منه من العمل وبقدر. نعم. So here the Shaykh rahimahullah is talking about beautifying yourself with the glory of the ulama and preserving that knowledge and protecting it, and preserving that knowledge and protecting it, and knowing that ilm has a hayba, it has sacredness around it, and that you need to protect yourself with that knowledge, and you need to act according to that knowledge, because for as long as you act upon that knowledge, then it will be, and you protect it, then it will also protect you. That's why Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu, when making a comparison between wealth and money, wealth and knowledge, he said knowledge is better than wealth. Why? Because with wealth, you have to protect it. Whereas with knowledge knowledge protects you from falling into mistakes. طيب. Then he mentions then he mentions a few lines of qasidat, lines of poetry by a sheikh called Jurjani rahimahullah, Ali bin Abdul Aziz, who died 392. He says يقولون لي فيك انقباض وإنما رأوا رجلا عن موقف ذل أحجما أرى الناس من دناهم هان عندهم ومن أكرمته عزة النفس أكرمه ولو أن أهل العلم صانوه صانهم ولو عظموه في النفوس لعظما. And the Shaykh Ibn Taymiyyah says رحمه الله لعظما is more correct, it would be exalted. So he says رحمه الله يقولون لي فيك انقباض وإنما, they say to me when they look at you, there's deflation and decline in you and humiliation, and you're secluded. Why? He says رأوا رجلا عن موقف ذل أحجمه. He says only because they see a person who, meaning himself, who withdraws from a place of humiliation. So if he sees مثلا the people of knowledge or certain individuals falling into humiliation, he withdraws, and they say to him, why are you withdrawing? So they're saying that to him. And he says, they say that to me. Like, why is that? لأني أرى الناس, I see the people. I see that with regards to the people, من دناهم حان عندهم. Whoever draws closer to them, then he becomes insignificant to them. Whoever draws closer to them, meaning the awam, comes closer to them and indulges in the vain talk that they're indulging in and so on and so forth, then he becomes insignificant to them. And they won't really respect him the way that they're meant to respect a alim. Because respecting a alim shows that you're respecting the ilm, the knowledge that he carries. Then he says, وَمَنْ أَكْرَمَتْهُ عِزَّةُ النَّفْسِ أُكْرِمَ. The one that has self-esteem will be honored. Then he says, وَلَوْ أَنَّ أَهْلَ الْعِلْمِ, and this is the mahallu shahid, if the people of knowledge protected it, then in return, لَصَانَهُمْ, the knowledge would protect them. If they protected and preserved the boundaries and the rights of knowledge, then that knowledge would have protected them. And if they were to exalt that knowledge, then that knowledge, if they were to exalt that knowledge and glorify that knowledge and respect that knowledge and honor that knowledge, then that knowledge would also be glorified and respected and honored in the hearts of the people. So the alim, and the student of knowledge, when they're acting upon something, they need to know that the awam are looking at you and they're going to judge you. And they're going to judge you with double standards. They may be doing something, like when you do something, or when you do the same thing, they're not going to be understanding. Whereas they want you to give them the benefit of the doubt, but they won't give you the benefit of the doubt. And the reason is because they're saying you have knowledge, you should know. And this is also similar to the next one, which is 47, Hilyatu Taalib al Ilm, preserving and protecting knowledge. He says, in balagta mansiban, if you reach a status, فتذكر أن حبل الوصل إليه طلبك للعلم, then remember that how you got there is because of your seeking of knowledge. فبفضل الله ثم بسبب علمك بلغت ما بلغت من ولاية في التعليم. So due to the virtue of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then as a reason, due to your knowledge, you reached the level that you reached with regards to في التعليم, in teaching, or al-futya, or giving fatwa, or al-qada, or judiciary, or giving rulings in the mahkamah, وهكذا, and likewise. So if you reach a certain stage in knowledge and you're able to give khutbah and or lectures and you're teaching and so on and so forth, or in a mahkamah giving ahkam on judging in cases and disputes and so on, then know that mansib, Allah Jalla wa Ala placed you in that mansib. Allah Jalla wa Ala placed you in that position. Then he says, وَهَكَذَا فَأَعْطِ الْعِلْمَ قَدْرَهُ, then give knowledge its correct honor and its correct right. وَحَظَّهُ مِنَ الْعَمَلِ, and also give it its correct right in acting upon that knowledge. وَإِنزَالَهُ مَنْزِلَةُ, and also to place it in its correct station. Now, and he says, وَحْدَرْ مَسْلَكَ مَنْ لَا يَرْجُونَ لِلَّهِ وَقَارًا, beware of those people who do not revere and show reverence to this knowledge. الَّذِينَ يَجْعَلُونَ الْأَسَاسَ حِفْظِ الْمَنْصِبِ, those who make their very first concern and their sole concern to preserve their status at the expense of what? Knowledge. فَيَطْوُونَ أَلْسِنَتَهُمْ عَنْ قَوْلِ الْحَقِّ, and then they enwrap and they stutter and they keep their mouth closed or their tongues closed with regards to saying the haqq. وتحملهم حب الولاية عن المجارات على المجارات. And they would say that their love that they have, or the Shaykh says, the love that they have for their status and their position prevents them from speaking the truth. So the Shaykh rahimahullah is warning against them, and he says, احفظ الله يحفظك, preserve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will preserve you, meaning preserve the boundaries of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because if you do preserve the boundaries of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then Allah jalla wa ala will also preserve you. Like the Prophet said, احفظ الله يحفظك, be mindful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah jalla wa ala will preserve you. The opposite is, if you don't preserve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you're not mindful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you won't obviously be preserved by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And another narration, the Prophet said, احفظ الله في رخاء يعرفك في الشدة, or يحفظك في الشدة. يعرفك في الشدة is the narration, I believe it was in At-Tirmidhi. Naam. So احفظ الله, preserve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in your time of ease, and then Allah Jalla wa Ala will preserve you and look after you in your times of difficulty and when you're in need of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then the Shaykh says, rahimahullah, number 48, or etiquette number 48, al-mudarat wal al-mudahana. He mentions two masail. Al-mudarat can be explained as diplomacy. Al-mudahana is to compromise. And these are two words that you're going to come across often. And the ulama often talk about it with regards to da'wah. So al-mudahana, he's going to explain. He says, al-mudahanatu khuluqun manhatun. He says, compromising the religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it is something which is despicable. Al-mudaratu, as for having diplomacy and leniency and understanding and having sympathy and empathy for the other people that you're giving da'wah to, fala, then it is not despicable. It is not something that is wrong. Lakin la takhlit baynahuma, lakin make sure that you don't mix these two. فَتَحْمِلُكَ الْمُدَاهَنَةُ إِلَى حَضَارَةِ النِّفَاقِ مُجَاهَرَةً. Because if that is the case, mudahana and compromising will take you into the realms of hypocrisy. وَالْمُدَاهَنَةُ هِيَ الَّتِي تَمُسُّ دِينَكَ. وَالْمُدَاهَنَةُ, it is that which, and compromising is that which harms and blemishes your religion. So mudarat is, مثلا, you're giving da'wah to someone, and you're using leniency and you're using different examples to them, and you're not compromising anything from the religion. Like, you're thinking of the best way to get this message across to them. That is needed in da'wah. That is wajib. When Allah Jalla wa Ala commands us to what? Ud'u ila sabili rabbika bil hikmah. Call to the way of your Lord with hikmah wa maw'idatil hasana, and a good admonition. So that is needed. Like, as for mudahana, it means that you leave off your religion or parts of your religion, and you leave off the knowledge that you have, and you know that it is haram, like, you leave it off for whatever reason, whether it's to preserve your status, to preserve your post, your role, or whether it is so that you can preserve a friendship, to preserve a friendship. Naam, so that is, or there's a difference between the two. The Shaykh says, rahimahullah ta'ala, rahmatan wasi'ah. So mudahana is blameworthy and mudarat is praiseworthy. Number 49, the Shaykh says, rahimahullah, al-gharamu bil-kutubi, having a strong passion for books. Having a strong passion for books. Right. For the next 3 or 4 etiquettes, up until the end of this chapter, the Shaykh rahimahullah is going to talk about the importance of books, how a student of knowledge should love books and have passion towards buying books and getting hold of books, and how to take notes and what to do when you buy a new book. So for the next 4 masail or 4 etiquettes, they're all connected and they're on the same topic, which is to do with the student of knowledge and his books. Because remember when we said in the muqaddimah that the book is very comprehensive. It deals with every aspect of the student of knowledge, even up until he talks about the books, when he buys it, what part he should read, not put it in his shelf straight away, as we shall see. He says, the Shaykh says, rahimahullah ta'ala rahmatan wasi'ah, sharaful ilmi ma'lumun li'umum naf'ihi. The virtue of knowledge is known due to its great benefit. وَشِدَّةِ الْحَاجَةِ إِلَيْهِ, and the strong need that the people have for it. كَحَاجَةِ الْبَدَنِ إِلَى الْأَنْفَاسِ, the need that people have for knowledge is like the need the people have for, or the body has for, being able to breathe. وَظُهُورُ النَّقْصِ بِقَدْرِ نَقْصِهِ, and the manifestation of deficiency within this knowledge, it will also show in the person. وَحُصُولُ اللَّذَّةِ وَالسُّرُورِ بِقَدْرِ تَحْصِيلِهِ, and the level of happiness and enjoyment that a person attains depends on the quantity of knowledge that a person attains. So knowledge equals happiness, because with this knowledge you will realize the boundaries of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You will act upon the boundaries of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you will know that if something harmful happens to you, then it is with the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and if something good happens to you, then you thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Inna al-mu'mina," the mu'min, amruhu khayr kulluh, all of his amr, all of his affair is good. Why? Because if goodness comes to him, then he's thankful. If hardship comes to him, then he is patient and he thanks Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he shows gratitude. So the Muslim's affair is always in goodness. Lakin that will only come when a person has what? Has knowledge. Therefore, knowledge, it brings you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It gives you, it brings you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It makes you a righteous person, and it obviously is a reason for you to enter into Jannah. Hence, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, whoever takes a path to Jannah, whoever takes a path to seek knowledge, then Allah will make easy for him the path to Jannah. Then the Shaykh says, rahimahullah, وَلِهَذَا, and because of this, because of what? The virtues of knowledge and the fact that it brings delight and enjoyment, اشتد غرام الطلاب بالطلب والغرام بجمع الكتب مع الانتقاء. Due to the virtue of knowledge, then students have this strong passion for and love towards knowledge and seeking knowledge, and also in gathering and collecting books. In collecting books, and also with careful selection. And then he mentions that he has authored a book called Khabar al-Kitab, and he hopes that Allah Jalla wa Ala can help him in completing that book. So he says, وَعَلَيْهِ, and based on this, فَحْرِزْ الْأُصُولَ مِنَ الْكُتُبِ, try to gather and collect the foundations of the books, the most important books, and those books, and collect them, those books that every single library of a student of knowledge needs. وَاعْلَمْ أَنَّهُ لَا يُغْنِي مِنْهَا كِتَابٌ عَنْ كِتَابٍ, and know that no book is sufficient for you to not need to buy another book. Like, so مثلا, he goes, when you buy a book, do not think, and then you come across another book. Let's say they're both on fiqh, or they're both on one subject. When you come across a book in the bookshop or somewhere that it's been sold or it's been given away, do not think, I don't need that book because I've already got a book on that subject. Why? Because he says that benefit, that book that you have, it won't suffice from the benefits that is found in that book, because every single book is different. Every alim is different. Just like every alim and every teacher is different in the way they teach, likewise every alim is different in the way they work, in the way they author books. So you might get one book, مثلا Usul al-Thalatha, and there are more than 15 different explanations on it. In every single explanation, there is a benefit that is not found in the other one. In every single benefit, in every single explanation. Sometimes the evidence in that they're using is completely different to the evidence that you find in another explanation. Therefore, if you have one explanation of a book and you come across another explanation, don't say, I don't need another explanation. I've already got the explanation of Usul Ibn Uthaymeen, Usul al-Thalatha. Compile other and build your maktaba by collecting all the books that you can. لكن he says ولا تحشر مكتبتك وتشوش على فكرك بالكتب الغثائية. لكن however, do not busy yourself and occupy yourself and fill your maktaba with books that are worthless and that are not beneficial. لا سيما كتب المبتدعة, سيما more so the books of innovators. فإنها سم ناقع, because it is what? It is poison. So he says, fill your book maktaba, your library, with beneficial books, and do not fill it with books that are harmful, especially books that are from the books of Ahlul Bid'ah. And do not say, but there's a benefit in this and there's a benefit in that. right? Because it will be harmful to you. Then he says number 50, qiwamu maktabatik. Then he says the foundation of your library. Now he's going to mention some of the books that you should have, or some of the authors whose books you should give a lot of attention to and you should spend your time and money on. He says عليك بالكتب المنسوجة على طريقة الاستدلال والتفقه على علل الأحكام والغوص على أسرار المسائل. He says upon you is, and give a lot of attention to, books that are written in a way of istidlal, in a way of evidencing. So it's not just mas'ala after mas'ala after mas'ala. Rather, the authors or the author, they look at the mas'ala and its benefit and its evidence, and they will tell you this is the evidence for it. This is the evidence for it. And وَعِلَى عَلَى عِلَلِ الْأَحْكَامِ, and also the ilal or the reasoning and the wisdom behind the ahkam. So for example, they will say to you, the hukum of this is that it is haram. And the illa, the reason, is because of X, Y, Z. Because of X, Y, Z. Now that is beneficial because why? Because you're not only going to know that hukum or the hukum of that particular mas'ala, the issue that he's talking about, but you're also going to broaden your horizon. You're going to know that every mas'ala, other mas'ala or issue that you come across that is similar to this also has the same hukum. Like last night when I was explaining the mas'ala to do with qiyas. Let's say a alim, there are two books, مثلا, compare two books. There's a book that says to you, qiyas means this, and it just explains it in general. And another book, he says qiyas is X, Y, Z, and he gives you 10 different examples. And in each example, he tells you what is the illah here. The illah is here, the illah here is this, the illah here is that. With gold, the illah is this, the reason why it's haram is this. Or the reason why there is riba is because of this. Or the reason why alcohol is haram is X, Y, Z. And then he connects this to other masail and other issues that are similar to it. For example, alcohol is haram, and you know the reason why it's haram. He mentions to you the reason why it is haram. So once you as a student of knowledge know the reason why it is haram, what can you do with that? What are you now going to do? Apply that. So you're going to know khamr is haram because it gets rid of your consciousness and your mind. Therefore, you're going to think, hold on, if that's the case, then everything that gets rid of your mind and causes you to lose your senses, then that is also haram. And then you're going to say, okay, in that case, qat is haram. Other types of A-class drugs are haram, and so on and so forth. طيب, what if a person says to you, طيب, cigarettes are haram because they get rid of your senses? Are you going to agree with him? La. So you can't use cigarettes here because it doesn't have the same effect as alcohol. So it's not a matter of just making qiyas for the sake of it. You're going to know what you can make qiyas on and what you can't. Because khamr is not the same as alcohol, because cigarettes are not the same as alcohol, are we going to say cigarettes are halal? No. Now we need to look for another asal, another reason why this could be haram. Understood? So مثلا, you say, مثلا, in the books of fiqh, they will tell you what a najasa is. When they tell you what a najasa is, from the things that are najasa is things that are harmful. Or you're studying a book on qawa'id al-fiqhiyya, and then you come across a qa'idah called la darara wa la dirar. There's no harm and there's no harming. So based on this qa'idah, you say, now that I know this qa'idah, anything that causes harm is haram. Because of the qa'idah, what qa'idah? La darara wa la dirar. Therefore you're going to say cigarettes causes harm. Sah? It harms the person and it harms the one that is there because he's actually passive smoking. So you say it's haram. Then you say, mathalan, playing out Quran in the middle of the night when everyone's asleep, 1 a.m. Playing it loud, blasting with massive speakers. What is the ruling on this? Haram? Who says haram? 1, 2, 3, 4. How can you say haram, Quran? وَرَتِّلِ الْقُرْآنَ تَرْتِيلًا. Allah tells us to read the Quran. How can you say it's haram? Because it's harming your neighbors. You're not saying the tilawah of the Quran is haram, but you're saying what is haram? The way that you're doing it and the time that you're doing it, because you're harming others. Is that understood? طيب. So that is what the Shaykh is referring to. He's saying make sure you buy those books and you fill those books with your library, because with these books you're not only going to broaden your understanding, like you're going to be able to get a wider understanding and a vast understanding of the Sharia and the ilal and the wisdoms behind a lot of the ahkam. And then he says وَمِنْ أَجَلِّ كُتُبِ الشَّيْخَيْنِ وَمِنْ أَجَلِّهَا, and from the best of these books is كتب الشيخين, the books of the Shaykhain, Shaykh Islam ibn Taymiyyah and Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah. These two alims, these two ulama, and we mentioned last night, their books are on this way, on this methodology of mentioning to you the usul, always bringing you back to the usul, so that later on you can run with that and you can come to your own conclusion and you can derive the rulings from the Quran and the Sunnah, because they've already given you the tools. So they concentrate on giving you what? Tools. And then he's going to mention a few other books or other ulama whose books are exactly the same as these books of Shaykh al-Islam and Ibn Qayyim. He mentions Ibn Abdul Barr, he mentions Al-Hafiz Ibn Abdul Barr, the Maliki scholar, and he says from the best of his books is At-Tamheed. And another Imam, Ibn Qudama rahimahullah. Ibn Qudama, we talked about it last night, and he has a lot of different books, from them Al-Mughni. Then he says also the books of an-Nawawi, Al-Dhahabi, Ibn Kathir, Ibn Rajab, Ibn Hajar, Al-Shawkani, Muhammad Abdul Wahhab, and so on and so forth, and the ulama of Da'wah Najdiyya, the students and the children of Shaykh Muhammad Abdul Wahhab rahimahullah, also As-San'ani rahimahullah. He has a book, obviously, explanation of Bulugh al-Maram, which is Subul al-Salam, and so on. Muhammad Amin Shinqidi, Sadiq Hassan Khan, and other ulama. So he says these, he's not limiting the benefit to these books. Also Ibn Uthaymeen rahimahullah, Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen rahimahullah, who's a faqih of this asr, the faqih of our era, his books are extremely beneficial. And all you have to do is look at his explanation of the fiqh book, Zaid al-Mustaqni', which falls in about 15, consists of 15 different volumes. 15 volumes. And it is extremely beneficial. And he has made fiqh so much easier for the student of knowledge. And who is similar to him is his Shaykh Abdurrahman al-Sa'di rahimahullah ta'ala, Abdurrahman Nasir al-Sa'di rahimahullah ta'ala. So anyone that reads the books of these two ulama will be very well grounded in the Sharia of Al-Islam, especially in fiqh and the usul and the qawa'id of fiqh, especially in the sciences of al-fiqh, because they do exactly what the Shaykh rahimahullah is mentioning here, whereby they return you back to the asl. So they're not teaching you they're not teaching you, or they're not giving you just the benefits like that. They're not just giving you the fish, they're giving you what? How to fish, how to derive rulings from the Quran and the Sunnah. And both of them have got books on Qawa'id al-Fiqhiyya and Usul al-Fiqh and so on. طيب. And then number 51, he says, التعامل مع الكتاب. How do you deal with your kitab? طيب. He says, rahimahullah, what you should do is, لا تستفيد من كتاب حتى تعرف. You won't benefit from a book until you know اصطلاح مؤلفه فيه. Until you know the terminologies of the mu'allif, the terminology that he mentions in his book. What does it mean when he says muttafiqun alayhi? What does it mean when he says sahih or sahih fulan? وَكَثِيرًا مَا تَكُونُ فِي الْمُقَدِّمَةِ. And a lot of the times it is always going to be in the what? In the muqaddimah, in the introduction. فَابْدَأْ مِنَ الْكِتَابِ بِقَرَاءَةِ مُقَدِّمَتِهِ. So start with any kitab you want to start reading. Make sure you read the muqaddimah. Any book that you want to read the muqaddimah. وَمِنْهُ. So what is the benefit of the muqaddimah? What are some of the things that we can benefit in the muqaddimah? Who can tell me? Excellent. Number one, you get a general overview of what the book is about. Is it in fiqh? Is it in hadith? Is it in tafsir? What else? Excellent. The methodology that he uses in authoring the book. Excellent. A breakdown of some of the topics that he will cover. So instead of saying to you, I'm going to start with alif and then all the way down to Z, he says to you, I'm going to talk about X, Y, Z. So later on you know what to expect. What else, man? Nah, you know the terminology that Shaykh is going to use throughout the kitab. So for example, if he says muttafiqun alayhi, what does it mean? Normally muttafiqun alayhi means what? Bukhari and Muslim narrated this hadith. In some books, you will find that muttafiqun alayhi means Bukhari, Muslim and Imam Ahmed narrated the hadith. For example, Masjid ibn Taymiyyah has a book called Al-Muntaqa, which is a hadith book slightly longer than Bulugh al-Maram. Masjid ibn Taymiyyah, who's the father of Ibn Taymiyyah, the grandfather of Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah. He talks about, he's muttafaqun alayhi according to him is not the same as Ibn Hajar. Also Ibn Hajar in Bulugh al-Maram, for example, he says Rawahu al-Khamsa. The five narrated this. Well, who are the five? So the terminology is very important that the person is used. What else? Excellent. Sababu ta'lif. Why did the author write the book? So for example, our book here that we're studying now, why did the Shaykh author this book? Who remembers anything that we took in the Muqaddimah related to this? We studied it. Excellent. There's an awakening, there's a return to seeking knowledge. So he said what? Okay, now that he saw that, what else? Excellent. He wanted to give them guidance so that they know how to go about seeking knowledge, the correct methodology, but also to avoid slipping and making mistakes that those before them made. So that is the benefit of the book that we're studying now. So that is the importance of reading the Muqaddimah. Right. Then the Shaykh says, وَمِنْهُ, and from this also, from the how to deal with a kitab, إذا حُزْدَ كتابا, if you get hold of a book, فَلَا تُدْخِلُ فِي مَكْتَبَتِكَ إِلَّا بَعْدَ أَن تَمُرَّ عَلَيْهِ جَرْدًا. Do not put it into your bookshop and do not put it on your shelf unless أو قراءة لمقدمته وفهرسه ومواضع منه. Do not put it onto your shelf unless you do the following or some of the following. Number one, he says, until you read it briefly. So for example, you don't read every single line, like you go through it. You go through almost every page or every few pages and you know exactly what the book refers to or is talking about. Or قراءة لمقدمته, or at the very least you read the muqaddimah. Or you read the muqaddimah. And you read the fihris, the contents page. Now, what is the benefit of this? A few benefits. مثلا, if you read the book briefly and you know exactly the masail that he talks about, or you read the contents page, or you read the muqaddimah later and then you put it on your shelf. Later on, should you come across something which is similar to this, then you know what book to refer to. You know what book to refer to. So therefore, it's a benefit that you read that muqaddimah and then you can go back to that or the part of the book that he mentions this. You're not going to be reading the whole book. Like there's a fa'idah that you came across somewhere and you remembered, hold on, I remember when I was reading the muqaddimah for this kitab, he mentioned he's going to talk about this mas'ala. Or I remember in the fahris, in the contents page, that he talks about مثلا فضل العلم. And I now need to prepare a lecture on فضل العلم. Let me go back to the pages that he talks about the virtue of knowledge مثلا. He says, لكن أما إن جعلته مع فنه في المكتبة. لكن if you say, I'm only going to put it back onto I'm only going to put it on the shelf. Buy it straight from the shop, buy it from the shop and put it straight onto my, in the library along with other books. So you buy a fiqh book مثلا, you say, I'm going to now place it with the other fiqh books. Or I'm going to buy a hadith book, place it with the other hadith books. He says if you do that, فَرُبَّمَا مَرَّ زَمَانٌ وَفَاتَ الْعُمْرُ دُونَ النَّظَرِ فِيهِ وَهَذَا مُجَرَّبٌ وَاللَّهُ الْمُوَفِّقُ. So he says, like if you say you're just going to buy it and then put it on your shelf, put it on your shelf, then you will find that many years have gone by and the time that you had for reading has now passed. You may be older in age, you may have less time and so on, and without even looking at the book. And he says that is mujarrab, that is something that happens, he said. So to avoid that, even if you don't have time to read it. For example, let's say مثلا now, the students are obviously attending this 1 month dawrah. So if you go to the bookshop a few days ago or a few days before the maktaba, after a few days before the dawrah, you go to the maktaba and you buy 2 or 3 books. You won't have time to read those books immediately. Why? Because of the dawrah, sah? Like when you quickly read the muqaddimah on the book that you've just bought, and then you put it somewhere in your library, later on, you know what the book was about, the book that you bought. You know exactly what it's about. So after the dawah, you can go back to it and you can read it. Or if you hear or come across a fa'idah in the dawah, and it's mentioned in that book, you can go back to it. Also, another benefit is of reading the book is so that you don't buy the same book again. That can happen. If you buy a book and you know obviously what book you're buying, like you put it into the shelf, because you haven't read it, you might go and buy the exact same book. So in order to avoid that, you read the muqaddimah. Then the Shaykh says, rahimahullah, number 53, i'jamu al-kitaba, to write and to perfect the kitaba or the writing of the book. نعم. So he says, إذا كتبت فأعجم الكتابة بإزالة عجمته وذلك الأمور أو بأمور. He says, مثلا, if you buy a book, or if you have a book, or before the lesson, or after or before the lesson, whether it's you that's teaching, or whether it's a lesson that you're studying from, he says, give attention to a lot of these masail that he's about to mention. So the importance of writing correctly and so on. So he says, wuduhul khat, the book that you're writing, or the notes that you're taking, or the book that you're buying, it has to have clear handwriting. It has to be clear. رسمه على ضوء قواعد الرسم. It has to be according to the قواعد of writing, the dictation, al-imla. So مثلا the correct spelling. Like مثلا, if you come across a book, if you're reading the book and then you find that it has spelled مثلا ذهب as هذب, and it's meant to be ذهب, then you obviously what? You correct it. Like you're not waiting until you correct it in the class and so on. Like you've corrected it beforehand. So that is you obviously preparing for the lesson. وفي هذا مؤلفات كثيرة من أهمها. And then he mentions a few books that deal with قواعد الإملاء, or the writings and the rules that pertain to when you're writing. For example, the hamza, where does it go? Does it go on the sadr? Does it go on the bottom? Does it go on the ya? Does it go on the wa? On the waw, I mean. So obviously he mentioned these books, and that is obviously pertaining to dictation. And the way to be to improve your handwriting is that you obviously write down the words, you practice with your handwriting, and the way to correct your spelling is, for example, you get someone to dictate it to you. For example, you put 10 words into a list and you say, مثلا, Abdul Karim, take these 10 words, read them out to me. And I'm not looking at these words. I write them. ذهب, خرج, دخل, رأيت, ضرب, and so on and so forth. Later on, or after I've finished the 10, I ask Abdul Karim to correct it. So the ones that are correct, alhamdulillah, correct. The ones that I made a mistake on, he highlights it for me. And then I go back to that. When I go back to that, I will know now that, hold on, I said daraba was what? Ra, da, ba. And that's a khata, that is wrong. I was meant to put the da first and the ra next and then the ba. So now that I've made that mistake and he's corrected for me, I won't make it again. And this is very important for students, because a lot of times, obviously all of you want to learn Arabic, inshallah, and a lot of you are in the process of learning Arabic. Lakin this aspect of writing is kind of like not given a lot of consideration and not given a lot of importance by many students. That is why in class we write the definitions, even though you're going to get the definition in English, like it's important that you write it in Arabic as well. It doesn't matter whether you make a mistake or not. Later on, when you go home, you look in the dictionary and you see the correct writing, or your friends will tell you and your peers will tell you the correct spelling. Like in the most important things that you write. Then the Shaykh says, rahimahullah, number 3, an-nuqad. Nuqad lil-mu'jam. Wal-ihmal lil-muhmal. Or an-naqd lil-mu'jam wal-ihmal lil-muhmal. طيب, he says, placing the dots, the critical points, placing them in its correct parts of the letter, or in the correct position of the letter. For example, where? Jim in the middle, Tha on top, Ba on the bottom, and so on and so forth, Dad, and so on and so forth. And also, Ash-shaklu lima yushkilu. Ash-shaklu lima yushkilu. Also placing the vowels on that which is confusing. So for example, مثلا ضرب and ضرب. ضرب means he hit. ضرب, it just says someone hit. Like, how would you know what the correct one is? By the context, whether it's ضرب or ضرب. You find out by looking at the context. Lakin later on, in order to make it easier for yourself, you just put the harakah, the correct harakah, you put it on there. And obviously that is before the class or even after the class. Then he says, rahimahullah, تثبيت علامات الترقيم في غير آية أو حديث. تثبيت علامات الترقيم simply refers to, the comma, hyphen marks, these sorts of in brackets, these are علامات الترقيم. طيب. And the understanding of the text, a lot of times how you understand the difference is where the comma is and the way the comma is. For example, a comma with a dot right underneath it, that shows ta'leel. It shows that the second part of the jumla or the first part of the jumla is a reason for the second, and so on. So that shows ta'leel. So he says that these alamat tarqim are extremely important. When to put the comma, where to put the hyphen, the brackets, and so on. Like he says, في غير آية أو حديث. In other than the what? The hadith or the ayat of the Quran of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So with the Quran, you don't put alamat tarqim, he's saying. And also likewise with the hadith. Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen says even with the hadith, it's okay if it helps with the understanding, meaning the question mark or alamat al-istifham and so on. طيب. Who has the English? Anyone got the English version of the book? English version of the book. Okay. Read number 5, please. Pay attention to to what I'm about to read. 1 second. He says, تثبيت علامات الترقيم, to write the points or the alamat, the commas and the question marks and the hyphens and so on, in other than an ayah, other than the Quran and other than the hadith. Meaning don't use commas and all that sort of stuff. The rulings of writing, don't use it on the Quran and the hadith. Is that understood? That's what the Shaykh means in Arabic. تفضل أخي. Say it again loudly. To write the numbers of the ayat and the hadith. Does anyone notice anything? Huh? It doesn't match. It doesn't match. And that is the benefit of maybe studying in a classroom environment. Now, the translation of the book is excellent, mashallah. The brothers, or the brother who translated it, is a very good explanation. Like for that point, it seems like what was translated is the complete opposite to what the Shaykh is saying. So the Shaykh is saying these translation marks, these commas and so on, alamat, the rules of writing, then don't apply them onto the ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the hadith of the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. طيب. Now, you can tell by even the explanation of Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen, that is what the Shaykh is referring to. No. So it just shows that sometimes you don't just rely on the translation. Not only that you don't just rely on the book. طيب. طيب. الفصل السابع. الفصل السابع. The seventh chapter. In this chapter, the Shaykh talks about al-Hadeeth. Al-Hadeeth. In this chapter, he talks about things that you as a student of knowledge should avoid. He talks about things that you as a student of knowledge should avoid. Why? Because in the Muqaddimah, what did he tell you he was going to do? He was going to tell you the do's and the don'ts. Sah? So far, in these 5 or 6, in the 6 chapters that have preceded, he's told you what to do, what you should be doing, how you should be dealing with your book, how to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, following the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, glorifying knowledge, honoring the scholars, and so on and so forth. Now, he's going to tell you the things that you as a student of knowledge should avoid in order to be given the tawfiq and aid and support from by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in order to carry on seeking knowledge and attaining beneficial knowledge for yourself. He says, rahimahullah, al-fasl sabi' al-Hadeeth, things to avoid or precautions. Number 1, hulum al-yaqada, false hopes. He says, إياك وحلم اليقظة. He says, ومنه from it أن تدعي العلم لما تعلم لما لم تعلم, that you claim knowledge and that you claim to know that which in reality you don't know. أو إتقان ما لم تتقن, or to claim itqana, that you claim to perfect and to know and to understand that which you do not perfect and you do not know and you do not understand. فإن فعلت, if you do so, فهو حجاب كثيف عن العلم. If you do this, then this, or you claim knowledge of that which you know and you claim to be prolific and have good understanding of that which you don't know, then it will be a thick curtain and a thick barrier between you and knowledge. Between you and knowledge. And why is it going to be a barrier? Because you already believe that you have knowledge of these things. You already know that you believe that you've studied this book. You already believe that you understand this mas'ala. Therefore, if you claim to understand it, you're not going to seek knowledge. You're not going to learn it. At the very least, you're not going to study that mas'ala, because you're claiming that you already know it. طيب. Then the Shaykh says, rahimahullah, number 55, احذر أن تكون أبا شبر. Beware of being a person of one span. A person of one span. And he'll elaborate on this. He says, فَقَدْ قِيلَ, verily it was said, العلم ثلاثة أشبار. He says that ilm, knowledge, is of three spans, i.e. three levels. طيب. Write this down because it's very beneficial. He says, don't be a person of the first span, because knowledge is of three spans, three levels. من دخل في الشبر الأول تكبر. The person who goes into the first level, the first span, he becomes haughty and his ego overtakes him and he becomes prideful and boastful. So you will find often that when a person starts to seek knowledge, after reading a book or two, or maybe studying one book or two books, they now think they're Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah. They now think that they can go into jarh wa ta'deel and say that this person is upon this and this person is upon that. And in reality, if you ask them, what is the meaning of this mas'ala that you keep mentioning to us? It's like, I don't know, but like, I heard Shaykh Fulan talk about it and I heard Ustad Fulan talk about it. Yeah, but you're the one that's now narrating it and you're testing people with it. Explain what you mean by this. And you'll often find that he hasn't understood what he's narrating himself. The second, he says, وَمَنْ دَخَلَ فِي الشِّبْرِ الثَّانِي تَوَاضَعَ. And then he says the person, when he carries on seeking knowledge and he passes the first level or the first span, he gets to the second span and the second level. And then he becomes humble. Because that person has now acquired some sort of beneficial knowledge. And he knows that what he has learnt has shown him that he has to obviously increase, like it has benefited him because he has given it time. So he's sought knowledge for about 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years and he becomes humble. Now he has some sort of understanding. He's not as ignorant as the first person. He has some sort of understanding, the Sharia, has some sort of knowledge. And that knowledge now has benefited him. Then he says, وَمَنْ دَخَلَ فِي الشِّبْرِ الثَّالِث. And the one that enters the third level, the third span, عَلِمَ أَنَّهُ مَا يَعْلَمُ شَيْءٍ. أَنَّهُ مَا يَعْلَمُ. After the third level, he realizes that he in reality doesn't know anything. So after studying for about 30, 40 years, and he's a alim, he knows that, subhanAllah, I do not know anything. And that is when a person reaches the level of being an alim, where he knows nothing. He says, كُلُّ مَا ازْدَدْتُ عِلْمًا ازْدَدْتُ عِلْمًا بِجَهْلِي, as Imam Shafi'i said. The more I sought knowledge, the more I became aware of what? Of my ignorance. And that is the benefit of knowledge. It will help you to realize that in reality, you don't know nothing. What was the ayah? فَوْقَ كُلُّ ذِي عِلْمٍ عَلِيمٍ, صح? The meaning is what? Above every person that is the alim, that person has knowledge, there is a person that is what? More knowledgeable. Look at Musa alayhi salam, a prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yet, although he was a prophet, he came to know that there was a man who had more knowledge, or he had knowledge of something that he did not know, knowledge that he did not possess. What did he do? He went out to what? To learn. And he followed him to learn. and to seek knowledge. He didn't say, "Khalas, I'm not going to go to someone else. I'm a Nabi, I'm a prophet." He would not say that. And you will find from among the ulama of the past, those who stayed with their shaykh for 20, 30, 40 years. 20, 30, 40 years they would spend with their shuyukh. And even up until now, you find ulama that are like that. So because they've sought knowledge for such a long time, they realize that I do not know. And that's why Imam Malik could afford to say, La adri, la adri, la adri. I do not know. Because he knows the mas'ala that he's been asked about, it's not as easy as that. He can say halal, haram, like he knows that there's obviously going to be repercussions to what he says. Also, the alim, the more knowledge a person has, he looks at masail from various different angles. So he knows there's a mas'ala and he knows that there's some sort of doubt surrounding it's halal due to this from this side, like it's haram due to this. That is why a lot of times you will find Hilyatu Kibar Ulama مثلا, a whole committee of ulama, and they're discussing masail that if it was given to any one of us, we'd say halal, haram. Of course that's haram. It's very simple. The dalil is this. Like they spend probably days and days and weeks on end researching it. Because they know that the Sharia is vast. And the only person that knows every aspect of the Sharia is who? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Naam. Then the Shaykh says, rahimahullah, and there's a benefit that I want you to write down or jot down, which is, now that you know that there are 3 levels of knowledge, and when you start seeking knowledge, you're always going to be on level 1. Therefore, what do you do when you're on level 1? You remain silent. You don't talk about Masail al-Ilm. You don't indulge in debates. You don't take part in debates. You don't bother yourself in refuting people. You leave that to the ulama and the students of knowledge that are higher than you in knowledge. As for yourself, your time and your role, the time that you're in and your role is to seek knowledge. And that is what it requires, that you remain quiet. That's why Abu Darda radiallahu anhu, he said, ta'allamu as-samt. Learn to be quiet. Learn to be quiet. كما تعلمون الكلام. i.e. كما تتعلمون الكلام, i.e. like you learn how to speak and what to say, then learn to be quiet and how to be quiet. فإن الصمت حلم عظيم. For verily, quietness is a great virtue and a great benefit. To prevent the illness is better than to what? To cure the illness. It is always better to avoid the illness and rather than having to later on cure it. Then the Shaykh says, rahimahullah, so that was a statement of Imam Shafi'i. Then he says, number 56, التصدق قبل التأهل. To become manifest and to put yourself in the field of ta'aleem and tadris, teaching and giving da'wah, قبل التأهل, before you are qualified. Before you are qualified. The Shaykh says, rahimahullah, احذر التصدق قبل التأهل هو آفة في العلم والعمل. Be careful and stay away from putting yourself forward and bring yourself manifest and bring yourself to the front line before you're qualified to do so. Because it is a disease in knowledge and action. Because you will be deprived from much good. وَقَدْ قِيلَ, and it was said, مَنْ تَصَدَّرَ قَبْلَ أَوَانِهِ, whoever puts himself forward or manifests himself before its correct time, فَقَدْ تَصَدَّى لِهَوَانِهِ, verily he has come forward to his humiliation. He has put himself forward for humiliation. And another qa'idah fiqhiyya says, write this down, there's a qa'idah fiqhiyya that says, من استعجل شيئا قبل أوانه عوقب بحرمانه. من استعجل شيئا قبل أوانه عوقب بحرمانه. This means whoever hastens to do something before its correct time, he is punished with being deprived of that thing. So if a person is a student of knowledge and he's seeking knowledge and taking from the scholars and he's upon the correct methodology, one day or another, inshallah, he's going to start teaching the ummah, benefiting the ummah, giving da'wah, being a alim, authoring and giving lectures and giving fatwa and so on. Naturally, that will happen. Like if he does that before its correct time, he'll be deprived of it, because now his mistakes will be more than his what? More than the things that he does correctly. His shortcomings will be more than his positive points. He'll make more mistakes that he shouldn't be making. He'll make mistakes and errors and giving fatwa that he shouldn't be given at that particular time. Naam. And that benefits the student, because when you're seeking knowledge, you're not seeking knowledge in order to be alim that the ummah looks forward to, or that looks to take from. Nor are you seeking knowledge so people can say that is a alim and so on and so forth. You seek knowledge because it is a hobby for you. It is something that you have this strong desire for. You learn because you want to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You learn because you want to act upon your knowledge. And everything else is secondary. Everything else is secondary. So therefore, if you want to have a long or spend a long time in knowledge in which you benefit from your knowledge, then do not put yourself forward for da'wah before it's time. A person can say, how does a person know when it's time for them to give da'wah? Your mashayikh tell you, your teachers will tell you, go and teach the ummah. Your teachers will tell you that go and teach at this madrasa or at this masjid and give this lecture or come for a khutbah in this masjid. Your teachers will often tell you if you're qualified to do so or not. Again, this doesn't mean that you have to go to a certain number of people to get a permit to teach. And that is another problem that we have here in this country, in the West in general, whereby even if a person is recommended by many of his teachers, when they come back to their communities and they want to teach books like Kitab al-Tawheed and so on, there are those that want to find the faults in that person and say he's a person of kada or kada, this, and say that he hasn't, who told him to teach? Who said he can teach? Who has given him permission? What they reality mean is not what the Shaykh is talking about here. What they mean is, why hasn't he gone to our people and our group? Why hasn't he sought permission from them? Why hasn't he gone to them? So they're referring to what? A few individuals, almost as if you have to go to them to get your license for da'wah. Like you go and get a driving license. So you have to apply for your license to give da'wah by going to these individuals. Who said that? And some of them even say that a person, as long as he takes from the scholars and he's connected to the elders of the community and so on and so forth, then he can give da'wah, obviously when the elders tell him you can give da'wah. Who says that? Also, your elders, the people you consider to be elders, are different to the people he considers to be elders. Is that not true? Not every community has the same elders. To say that there's only one Salaf community in the West or in the UK, that's batil, that's false. And the Shaykh rahimahullah is going to talk about this point in detail. Number 57, he says rahimahullah, at-tanammur bil-ilm. In this topic, he's going to talk about, tanammur literally means do not become a tiger, meaning do not become a person who uses his knowledge to flex his muscles. A person who learns one or two masail and then he starts to think he's a person that can compete with his shaykh, and he decides to try to show up his shaykh and so on and so forth. Now, so he says, احذر ما يتسلى به المفلسون من العلم يراجع مسألة أو مسألتين فإذا كان في مجلس فيه من يشار إليه أثار البحث فيها ليظهر علمه وكم في هذا من سوءة أقلها أن يعلم أن الناس يعلمون حقيقته. He says rahimahullah, be careful of what those people who are bankrupt do. Be careful of what they do, and those that claim knowledge, be careful of what they do. Whereby they revise a mas'ala or mas'alatain, they revise one mas'ala or another mas'ala, or two or three masail, and then فإذا كان في مجلس, if he's in a gathering, whether it's a gathering in a class or in any other gathering of knowledge, and there are people that are people of status or knowledge, أثار البحث فيها, he starts to mention and talk about the two masail or the three masail that he done an in-depth detail on, like, so that his knowledge can be apparent and the people can say, mashallah, he's got quite a lot of knowledge. When in reality he's only done bahth of two masail. Every majlis he goes, he mentions these two masail. So when people hear that, mashallah, he's talking about qala fulan wa qala dala kada wa kada, they think, mashallah, this person's a alim. But in reality he only knows these two masail. If you was to ask him about a third mas'ala, he wouldn't know. And then the Shaykh says, rahimahullah, that is a big aib, that is an embarrassment for this person. And the least of the harms, it has many harms. He says the least of those harms is that people will know your reality. The people will know your reality. Why is that? Because the people of knowledge, they can tell the difference between the person who's pretending to have knowledge, who is pretending to be a shaykh and a alim, and the one who in reality is. So you will find that the alim, the person of knowledge, he doesn't talk. He doesn't talk about masail al-ilm unless asked. And he doesn't, even if he does talk about masail al-ilm, he talks about something that is relative to what is being discussed in the gathering. He doesn't bring another mas'ala in order to exercise his muscles and show everyone that he has knowledge of this or knowledge of that. And the people of knowledge can easily tell. Just like last night when I was mentioning the example, if 5 doctors are in a room and then a person who is a professional in a different field comes in to this room with them and he starts to try to take part in their discussion about medicine, will he be able to keep the conversation up? And he has no idea what they're talking about. La. Can he fake it with them? La. They will know by how he's talking and what he's mentioning that he is pretending to have knowledge of medicine, right? Like if he goes to 5 or 10 other people who have no idea about anything in medicine, can he not fool them? Of course he can fool them. All he has to do is read a few pages on Google about anything to do with mathalan, a part of medicine, and then he'll pretend that he has knowledge of medicine. So he can fool them because they have no understanding of that science, of that field. Like, and he can't fool the people that are professionals in that field, just like the people of knowledge. And then he says, rahimahullah, وَقَدْ بَيَّنْتُ هَذِهِ مَعَ أَخَوَاتٍ لَهَا فِي كِتَابِ التَّعَالُمِ وَالْحَمْدُ لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. Because I mentioned, when I talked about this, and other masail in the book of At-Ta'alum, meaning those who feel knowledge or those who pretend to have knowledge. He has a book on that topic. Now, number 58. The Shaykh says, rahimahullah, he said, تَحْبِيرُ الْكَاغِدِ. He says, be warned and stay away from putting pen to paper, meaning authoring and writing and giving a bahth. كما يكون الحذر من التأليف الخالي من الإبداع في مقاصد التأليف الثمانية. He says, just like it is something which is blameworthy and that you should be warned from authoring and writing if there is no benefit in you writing and it doesn't go with any of the objectives of authoring and writing a book. والذي نهايته تحبير الكاغذي فالحذر من الاشتغال بالتصنيف قبل استكمال أدوات واكتمال أهليتك والنضوج على يد أشياخك فإنك تسجل به عارا وتبدي به شنارة. He says, if you author and you write about a certain mas'ala, about a certain issue, when you're not qualified to do so, without having the correct tools, without being encouraged by your mashayikh, then verily you are putting yourself to shame and you are bringing embarrassment upon yourself. So he says, what are the etiquettes of, or what are the reasons of writing? He mentions that they are 8. From those reasons of writing is اختراع معدوم. اختراع معدوم, and you might be inventing something new. Not inventing something new as a bid'ah, lakin, مثلا Imam al-Shafi'i, it is said that he was the first to author in what science? In usul al-fiqh. In usul al-fiqh. So when Imam al-Shafi'i authored a risala, the book, a risala in usul al-fiqh, then that is ikhtira'u ma'doom, something that is not there, he's now writing in, and he's authoring. That's why Imam Ahmed said, rahimahullah, about Imam al-Shafi'i, he said about him that they would understand, they would find it difficult to understand hadith itself, until when Shafi'i came. And then when Shafi'i came, he gave them the keys of understanding the hadith. Why? Because he was a faqih. Although the other imams were also fuqaha, and they were ulama like Imam Ahmed and the other ulama, like Imam al-Shafi'i, Allah Jalla wa Ala gave him understanding of the Sharia to the extent that he was able to start and author this ilm called ilm usul al-hadith, usul al-fiqh. And anyone and everyone who's authored after Imam al-Shafi'i always goes back to and relies upon his book, Risala. Naam. And the second reason is jam'u mutafarriqin. For a person to combine masail that are found scattered all over the place. So there are masail that are scattered all over the place, benefits that are scattered all over, in this book and in that book and in this book. And then he now, or the alim, brings it together as a science. As a science. Under one umbrella. طيب. Number 3, تكميل ناقص. To complete something which is deficient. To complete something which is deficient. For example, a person authors in a specific science, lakin it is not complete. There are many other masail or benefits that are missing from his book. Another alim comes and he adds مثلا the 20 masail or the 30 or the 50 masail that he left out, and then he completes his book. Number 3, تفصيل مجمل. Number 4, تفصيل مجمل, where a person explains something that was ambiguous or something that was written in general. He specifies something that was written in general. أو اختصار, or you can say تهذيب مطول. To summarize a book that was long. من المطولات. It was a book that was long, مثلا 3, 4, 5, 6 volumes, and then summarizing it. Who can give me an example of this? نعم, صفة الصلاة على النبي. الشيخ الباني رحمه الله, صفة الصلاة was in how many volumes initially? 3 volumes, and then he summarized it to 1 small volume, and then he summarized it to تلخيص. Another example. أحسنت, زاد المستقنع. طيب, so زاد المستقنع is a summary of what? المقنع. And the المقنع belongs to who? Ibn Qudam. أحسنت. So summarizing a book. For various reasons, maybe the masail that are found in this book are no longer relevant in this day and age, or maybe because he left a few masail out, or maybe, and so on and so forth, or maybe it was too long. طيب, number 7, or number 6 عفوا, ترتيب مخلط. So now this person, he authors a book, but in order to put things into place, in order. For example, an alim authors a book and he talks about 30 different masail, lakin he doesn't do them in order. And then an alim comes after him and he starts to do it in order. So for example, if I give an example, مثلا, let's say an alim authored a book on the etiquette of seeking knowledge. And then he starts off by writing the Al-Hadeeth, the 7th fasl, which is things that you should avoid when seeking knowledge. And then he starts it off, and then the second chapter is on the etiquettes of seeking knowledge. So an alim comes after him and he changes it around. So he starts off by what? Etiquettes of seeking knowledge, the do's and the rules and so on. And then he goes on to the second chapter or the third chapter to do with things that you should avoid. Is that understood? Right. I'll write it later on inshallah. Message it, just explain, remind me. طيب. أو تعيين مبهم أو تبيين خطأ. Number 7 is تعيين مبهم, whereby an author talks about different masail and different mabahith or different subjects, lakin it is not clear what he's referring to. So then the author comes after him and he clarifies exactly what the author is referring to. And the 8th one is تبيين الخطأ. An author, alim, writes a book, and in that book there are a few mistakes. Then an alim comes after him and he corrects those mistakes. But that would obviously be a mukhtasar or a tahdhib, usually called a tahdhib. طيب. You can remind me, Mohammed. No. So the Shaykh rahimahullah, at the beginning he says stay away from authoring if you do not need to author, if there's no benefit in it, if you're a person that's not qualified, and so on and so forth. Lakin he says, أما الاشتغال بالتأليف النافع, as for busy yourself with authoring and writing books that are beneficial, لمن قامت أهليته, for a person who is qualified, واستكمل أدواتي, and he has completed the tools for being able to write, وتعددت معارفه, and he is vast in knowledge, وتمرس به بحثا, and he has experience in research and revising and so on, and reading and exploring the longer books. فهو من أفضل ما يقوم به النبلاء من الفضلاء, then it is one of the best things that a person can do. It is one of the best actions that those people who have been given insight and the virtuous people can do. So writing books is something which is virtuous. مثلا, at the moment we're studying Hilyatu Taalib al Ilm, and the Shaykh rahimahullah, he authored it about 38 years ago or something like that. Here we are benefiting from it. So if we were to say to him, don't write, we wouldn't have this benefit. And likewise of all of the sciences in Islam, in all of the books that you come across in every different science, in every book there's a benefit. In every book that the ulama have written, there is a benefit. It doesn't mean every single book is haqq, because the only book that contains the haqq is what? The book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Lakin it is also going to be beneficial for those people that come after them, because a alim can write or explain the mas'ala in a way that the alim that preceded him might not explain it.
Would the same apply for translating?
The same would go, ahsant, jazakallah khairan. Also the same would go for translating a book. Mathalan, this book now that we're studying, if you don't have the Arabic book or a copy, or if you don't understand Arabic, then you wouldn't have access to it. Lakin, if you've got the translation, then you are now able to understand what the author is referring to. And the explanation, the translation of this book is really, really good, mashallah. May Allah Jalla wa Ala reward the brother that did so, the translator. طيب. Then the Shaykh says rahimahullah, ولا تنسى قول الخطيب, and do not forget the statement of Khatib al-Baghdadi rahimahullah, where he says, من صنف, whoever authors, فقد جعل عقله على طبق يعرضه على الناس. Verily he has placed his mind, his brain, he has placed it on a tray and he's presented it to people. So when you write a book, it is literally you saying to people, خذوا, take my mind and read it. This is my level of understanding. This is my level of knowledge. So when a person writes a book, then you can often tell that person's level of knowledge by the book that he has authored and the issues that he talks about and the way he uses evidences from the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the statements of the Salaf. Also, Shaykh Bakr Abu Zaid rahimahullah was from those people who, from the ulama who was a prolific author. His books are some of the most beneficial books around, and even the language he writes it in is high class, is classical Fusha, it's classical Arabic, that for every word or every page you would need to go back to a dictionary. And you would need to go back to a dictionary. Naam. So you would find that he never really used to teach. And I read somewhere that he was asked to teach, I think it was Zaid al-Mustaqil, he was asked to teach a book. And he said he refused to do so because he said that when you're teaching, you need to give it 110%. Because this student has a right over you when you're teaching him a book. So you need to be able to teach him in a way that can make him understand the matan. He says he doesn't have time to prepare the class and doesn't have time to teach the class. And in order to give the class its correct due. Like we've also in, mashallah, he's obviously he was a bahith. Rahimahullah ta'ala rahmatan wasi'ah. طيب. So regarding that, there was a point, the mas'ala earlier on, to do with siyanatul ilm, preserving knowledge. Preserving knowledge. From preserving knowledge, just to go back onto that, is that you don't engage in disputes and arguments with everybody, regardless of what they say about you. The awam, مثلا, last night when we were studying, the Shaykh said, rahimahullah, that a student of knowledge should be different to the who? To the awam. Not to belittle the awam. Lakin, what is the difference between a student of knowledge and an alim, or from the student of knowledge and the person who is not a student of knowledge, is that this person now, he lives with the Quran and the Sunnah. He's seeking knowledge. He's on the path to salvation. He's on the path to seeking knowledge. Therefore, he understands what Allah wants from him and requires from him more than the ami, more than the person that doesn't. But like he said, rahimahullah, that this student of knowledge should not act and should not be acting and conducting himself in the same way that the ami would do so. Because the ami may be excused for making a certain mistake. Like, will the student of knowledge be excused for making a simple mistake like that? No, he wouldn't be. Why? Because he's meant to know this. Likewise, when it comes to debating and arguing, it is no point for you to debate with people who come to you with different masail. People will always come to you with masail. For example, they say to you, why do you go to this masjid? Why do you go to that masjid? Why do you take from that person? And so on and so forth. When they come to you with this, they're confusing you. And what they're saying and the people that they're telling you to go to, they have no idea, nothing, they have no information about them. They have no knowledge about them. And they have no knowledge about the people that they're warning against and why they're warning against them. And sometimes they will refute you and say you're this and you're a person of desires, and because you're seeking knowledge in this masjid, you're a person who leaves off the haqq. To the extent that some of them, it was said to, if you're not with us, then you're not sincere. You don't have ikhlas. If you don't come with us, you don't have ikhlas. Those sorts of people, what do you do? Turn away from them. You don't have to have an argument with them. You don't have to dispute with them. Ikhlas, turn a blind eye. Because ilm has a level. It has honor. If you argue with these people and you dispute with these people and you refute them and so on, you're belittling the knowledge that you have. Why are you going to argue with awam? As long as you know these people are awam, which a lot of them are, and they're not even serious or they're not even students of knowledge, then it's important that you don't scoot down to their level, and that you do not belittle the knowledge that Allah Jalla wa'ala has granted you, or the ability that Allah Jalla wa'ala has given you, and the love that Allah has given you for knowledge in your heart. Allah has placed in your heart love of knowledge. Go and seek that knowledge. What is stopping? Is there a barrier between you and seeking knowledge? No. So busy yourself with the knowledge and turn away from all of those people that have a lot to say. Because people that do not have anything to learn and that haven't studied anything from the Sharia of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and haven't actually put in time to seek knowledge, they have time on their hands. But you as a student of knowledge, you don't have time on your hands. There's a lot to learn. There's a lot of things to memorize. There's a lot of sciences that you need to study, and so on and so forth. There's a lot of places you need to go to, a lot of masajid you need to go to, a lot of different books you need to buy, a lot of different books that you need to read, a lot of different masail that you need to understand. So if you busy yourself with every Tom, Smith and Harry that talks about you and speaks and so on, you're not going to get time for anything. Like, you just turn a blind eye. They can't harm you. If you turn a blind eye, they can't harm you. Wherever they say, khalas, leave them alone. Let them say what they want to say. Then the Shaykh says, rahimahullah, number 59. So we'll finish in about just under 10 minutes before Maghrib, inshallah. We'll stop for Maghrib and then resume after Maghrib, but there's not long left after Maghrib. Then the Shaykh says, rahimahullah, موقفك من وهم من سبقك. Number 59. He says, what should you do and what should your position and your stance be towards those people, the ulama, that make a mistake? Those that came before you who made a mistake. He says, إذا ظفرت بوهم لعالم, if you find a mistake from one of the ulama, فلا تفرح به لحظ منه, do not become happy with this, so that you can now degrade him and say, Wallahi, look, he made this mistake and he's made this mistake and so on and so forth, and then you get happy. This is the opposite to some people today, whereby if they see someone that has made a mistake, they say, Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alam is khayrun saqahu Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ilayna. That is khayr that Allah has given us. We knew that they were upon batil. We knew that he was upon batil. So they get happy when a person, a alim, makes a mistake. لكن he says, لكن افرح به لتصحيح المسألة فقط. لكن be happy in the fact that you're correcting this mas'ala. Don't be happy that he made that mistake. And don't be happy the fact that he's made that mistake. Lakin be happy that you're correcting the mistake and there is someone to correct the mistake. He says, فإن المنصف يكاد يجزم بأنه ما من إمام إلا وله أغلاط وأوهام لا سيما المكثرين, it's better to say المكثرون منهم. He says, for verily the person who is just, the person who is fair and just, he will definitely understand and acknowledge that there is not an imam, a alim, a shaykh, except that he has mistakes, except that he will have an opinion that is the weaker opinion. He says everyone that is a just person will acknowledge this and understand this, meaning it is a given fact. He says especially those who write a lot, especially those who are involved in knowledge a lot, especially those who teach a lot. So anyone that does action, gives da'wah or is teaching or authoring, you're obviously going to find faults in the book or in something that they may say in class. It is natural, the Shaykh is saying rahimahullah. لكن he says نعم وما يشغب بهذا ويفرح به إلا لتنقص نعم ويفرح به لمتنقص أو لتنقص إلا متعالم يريد أن يطب زكاها فيحدث به جذاما. He says عفوا أن يطب زكاما فيحدث به جذاما. He says رحمه الله, and the person that will make a big deal out of this and the one that will be happy with this so that they can belittle this alim, this scholar, is only a muta'alim, a person who is a pretender of knowledge. He has no portion of knowledge, and he is not a person who has sought knowledge in the correct way. Rather, he's like a person who wants to cure a disease, cure a small cough, a minor cough with a greater disease. طيب. Then he says نعم ينبه على الخطأ أو الوهم أو وهم وقع لإمام غمر في بحر علمه وفضله. نعم. He says ينبه على خطأ, لكن the mistake, you clarify the mistake, أو وهم, or the misunderstanding he has, وقع لإمام, that the imam may fall into. You correct that mistake. غمر في بحر علمه وفضله, لكن that mistake is covered up by all of the virtues that person has and all of his virtues and all of his knowledge. لكن لا يثير الرهج عليه بتنقص منه, لكن he doesn't throw dust over the masala and make a meal out of it just because that person or the alim made a mistake. والحض عليه فيغتر به من هو مثله, so that a person, so that he is totally disregarding people, leave him alone and so on and so forth. So here in this masala, the Shaykh rahimahullah is talking about if you come across a mistake of a alim, what should you do? He's saying first and foremost, do not be happy at the fact that he made a mistake. Number two, be happy that you're correcting the mistake. Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen says even you shouldn't be happy that you corrected the mistake, just correct the mistake. Because the reason why is because everyone is going to make a mistake. There is not an imam, a alim, except that he makes a mistake. And then number three, he says the only one that will be happy with this and make a big deal out of it and make a meal out of it is the muta'alim, the person who believes that he knows everything, or the person that doesn't have any knowledge, like he believes he has knowledge. And he has a few of the awam that call him a alim, a shaykh and so on. And then now he believes he's the biggest shaykh in the balad, in the country. Therefore, he obviously can say to other people, "Mad mistake, Adam, khata, 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 khata," because he doesn't actually have any knowledge. Because knowledge is not only information that you're taking in. Knowledge has etiquettes, and from the etiquettes of knowledge is what? Wanting good for the alim that makes a mistake. You want good for him, but you obviously clarify the mistake. Then the Shaykh says, Sahih, number 5, he says, the mistake is to be corrected, or number 4, the mistake is to be corrected. However, that mistake is covered up by all of the virtues and the knowledge that that alim has. Is that understood? There's a beneficial statement by Imam al-Dhahabi rahimahullah that we can benefit from. He says, إِنَّ الْكَبِيرَ مِنْ أَئِمَّةِ الْعِلْمِ, verily the alim who's big in, one of the ulama, the imams, إِذَا كَثُرَ صَوَابُهُ, if his correctness, his goodness is a lot, مثلا, he has a lot of goodness and a lot of virtue and a lot of knowledge. وَعُلِمَ تَحَرِّيهِ لِلْحَقِّ, and it is known from him that he is a person that seeks the truth, regardless of where it is. And he doesn't have ta'assub and fanaticism to a certain person or madhab. Lakin they know that he's a person who loves the haqq. وَاتَّسَعْ عِلْمُهُ, and his knowledge is vast. وَظَهَرَ ذَكَاؤُهُ, and he is a very intelligent alim or person, and it is apparent. وَعُرِفَ صَلَاحُهُ, and his piety is known. His piety is known. وَوَرَعُهُ, and his piety or his fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is known as well. He says, وَاتِّبَاعُهُ, and also his following of the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is also known. So if a alim, he is known to have all of these traits that I've just met, that Imam al-Dhahabi has mentioned. He says, يُغْفَرُ لَهُ زَلَلَهُ, يُغْفَرُ لَهُ زَلَلُهُ, يُغْفَرُ لَهُ زَلَلُهُ. His mistake is what? To be forgiven. His mistake is to be pardoned. يُغْفَرُ لَهُ زَلَلُهُ. لماذا? Why is his mistake to be pardoned? Because all of his good virtues will what? Will cover it. وَلَا نُضَلِّلُهُ, and we do not say that he's a lost and misguided person. وَنَطْرَحُهُ, and we do not throw him off. وَنَنْسَى مَحَاسِنُهُ, and we do not forget his good traits. نعم, he says. However, obviously, وَلَا نَقْتَدِي بِهِ, we do not copy him. فِي بِدْعَتِهِ, in his bid'ah. Not even any old mistake. With his bid'ah, we don't copy him. وَخَطَأُهُ, and his mistake. نعم. ولا نقتدي به في نعم في بدعته وخطئه, and we do not copy him in his bid'ah and his mistake. ونرجو له التوبة, and we hope for him a tawbah min dhalik. We hope for him what? A tawbah, that he makes tawbah and he repents to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and he comes back from his bid'ah. So Imam al-Dhahabi rahimahullah says this, and you can find this in the 5th volume of Sirr A'lam Nubala, page 271. And he says this when he's talking about the tarjama of Qatada ibn Di'ama. And he was accused of having a bid'ah in the qadr. And it is very important for students to realize this today and implement this advice of Imam al-Dhahabi. Because you will find that there are ulama of Ahlul Sunnah who they might have made a mistake, or a person assumes that they've made a mistake. And because of that mistake that they have made, or that mistake that this ignorant person assumes that they have made, then you find that he is no longer even taken into consideration. Yesterday he was a allama, a alim, an imam. Today he's jahil, min ajhal al-nas, min afsaq al-nas, and he has no knowledge and there's nothing. And he's the person who's, mathalan, every bad word under the sun. And that shows lack of balance and lack of piety from that person, or from those people, or from that group of people, from those people who act in this despicable way. Rather, you will find that that's not the madhab of the ulama. The ulama, they say to the mukhti', the one that makes a mistake, anta akhtat, you've made a mistake. طيب. And when they say to him, you've made a mistake, they do so in a way that has mercy and in a way that he can return back to the haqq. Also, the ulama, they differentiate between a person who's upon the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ and a person who is a mubtadi' from the get-go. So you will find that with regards to the sunni, the person who's upon the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ and his foundations are upon the haqq, then the mistake that he has, they pardon him and they make dua for him. as for the opposite to that, as for the other people, they say, the Sunnah, the Mubtadi' all the same. Ala tul. You make one mistake, you're out of the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that is obviously the other extreme, which is not permissible either. And we'll stop there for Salah and resume inshallah after the prayer.